Good morning, ladies. Good morning. All right. Okay, that's better. Well, my name is Alma Costa, and I will be your MC for this beautiful conference that Our Lady has planned out for you all. We are so grateful to God for this day where we will be learning and celebrating about motherhood and just the beauty of how God really designed it to be for every mother. And the idea of this conference was really born out of a love for motherhood, and it was also inspired by a very special book, which is called See You in Heaven. It's basically a book compiled of love letters from a mother to her daughters. And her name was Rosie. Maybe some of you have already read this book. And Rosie was a Catholic mother who lived her vocation lovingly and courageously in this time and age. And today our hope is that you will learn about the vocation and be inspired to continue living it out fearlessly, or prepare for God's call if you're single and discerning the vocation. So now let us go to our Blessed Mother for her protection and for our hearts to be open to what her Son has prepared for us this day. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Immaculate Heart of Mary, pray for us. And without further ado, our first speaker is Father Robert. He's an associate priest of Holy Innocents who loves to share the truths about the vocation of marriage and motherhood, and especially after being impacted by Rosie's book, See You in Heaven. So here is Father Robert with you.
Okay, just so nervous. Well, hello to everyone. And we just prayed the Hail Mary, so great. I was going to pray the Hail Mary too. Is another one okay? Yes. Sure. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. So we're all very excited to share this beautiful wisdom today about motherhood. And I know when I was first asked to give a talk today, I was like, oh, I don't want to. Because, one, I'm just kind of shy, but that's not a good. I'm a priest. I have to talk every day, but also because I'm not a mom. So what am I going to say? But and I want to hear everyone else talk. But then they kind of convinced me it's true. But the priest is not a mom, obviously, but he's a dad, and the dad is supposed to teach. So I have to teach, and so it's all teaching. So, but also I actually did read this book last year, someone had given to me this book over a year ago, and I read it about almost exactly a year ago, and it actually had a huge impact on me. It was actually one of the most powerful books I read in recent years. And I remember actually crying at a few different points. It was so powerful. It was just, I don't know why it impacted me so much, but it definitely did. And so I'm like, well, maybe I can share about this. I can talk today because I read this book. It did have a big impact on me. And as it turns out, once you read the book, or if you haven't read the book, it turns out that Rosie Gill, she actually learned a lot of her wisdom from a priest. So unfortunately, so what happened when she and Mr. Gill will talk after me, but from what I understand, it was after they were just married, shortly after they were just married, that they took a course called femininity course, and it was all about these truths which we're going to be hearing today, which really I mean, I never received any teaching about any of these things, really, like probably most of us, I'm guessing, but it's sort of like the wisdom of the Catholic teaching, the wisdom of the Catholic faith about motherhood that has just kind of been lost in the past 50 years or so. So like in the seminary where I went, we didn't learn about any of this. So now I'm kind of learning more. But what was interesting was that when I read this book, it was like everything made total sense. Like even though I hadn't received any teaching about all this, everything made sense. It was also like it resonated totally with my mind and heart. Like this is true. This is beautiful. So what I kind of compared it to when I was thinking about it is like when I discovered Holy Communion, the traditional way of receiving Holy Communion. So I grew up at a parish, like the majority of parishes, where everyone received communion in the hand. And so growing up, that's how I received. I never even really saw, I don't even think I ever saw anyone not receiving the hand, as far as I know. I definitely didn't see anyone kneeling. I never knew that. And so, and so I grew up receiving communion in the hand, and but it was like in my early 20s when I started growing more in my faith, then I started realizing more and more like the teachings of the church, like this really is Jesus alive. He's really there. He's truly here. And not only is he truly here in the host, but he's there in every little particle. And so as the more I learned about that, and then I started realizing, like, wait a minute, there's like particles sometimes that stay on my palm of my hand or my fingers. I'm like, this doesn't seem right. What happens when everyone's done it? Just the particles drop to the ground. This doesn't seem right at all. This is weird. This can't be right. And so like God, and then I realized in my early 20s I was very ignorant for much of my Catholic faith, but the faith was given to me deep down in my heart like a gift. That the faith is a gift, but the understanding of it wasn't there. But then like in my early 20s I started realizing, oh yeah, you can receive communion in the mouth. Oh, well that makes perfect sense then, because I'm noticing these particles here of Jesus. If I receive in the hand, there's always the danger of particles being lost. So anyway, I started receiving in my mouth, and then a few years after that, I realized, and I'm so late, like some of you have grown up with this, like the Holy Innocents, it's no big deal for you, but then I realized you could receive communion kneeling, and I was like, oh my goodness, that's amazing. That makes total sense. Of course, if this truly is Jesus and truly is God, Jesus is God, then of course we'd want to receive him kneeling. Absolutely. So it made total sense. So, and then I started receiving kneeling, and I was, but my point is, like, I think when I read this book, I was thinking, sorry. So when I read this book, I had some sort of similar kind of experience. Like, it was like, oh yeah, this makes total sense. This is the way it's supposed to be. This is beautiful. That's kind of how when I realized communion should be received only on the tongue and kneeling, that's kind of the same idea. Like, this is how it's supposed. And then I did learn that for almost 2,000 years, this is how Catholics receive communion, kneeling and on the tongue. That is, and in the Latin Mass, which I discovered later on, that's the only way to receive. So everything made sense, but it was like it had all been lost. So, and that's the same thing I believe about these teachings about motherhood. It's all of our past heritage for 2,000 years, but it's been lost because of the cultural revolution that happened, like in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and the way I was thinking, it's like a gigantic hurricane came into our world in the 60s, but it was building for decades and even centuries before, like basically like atheism, not believing in God, even rebelling against God, rebelling against moral laws. The whole anti-Christian worldview was sort of growing little by little. But then by the time the 60s comes around, it's like a gigantic hurricane. And the hurricane came roaring through the world, just ripping up all of our culture, all of our Christian beliefs, just everything. And then unfortunately the church, the human element of the church wasn't strong enough to withstand the hurricane. So the hurricane just went right into the church and just ripped apart everything inside the church, throwing up liturgy, mass, theology, morality, traditional teachings about motherhood. Everything just got ripped apart. And it's like if a hurricane comes through a countryside or a town, and afterwards you look at it, it's all destroyed. It's all devastated. Well, that's kind of thing what happened in our Catholic Church, in our world, the past 50 years. And we're all, any one of us that was born after 1960 or so, we're all born into like a post-devastation kind of time. So we've lost all of those beautiful Catholic roots, like communion, receiving on the tongue, the beautiful teachings of motherhood, all the Catholic faith. It's all kind of been, we've all been disconnected from those roots, and now we're all kind of just like, we're born into that devastation, and we're all kind of just like survivors, you could say, post-hurricane, of a post-hurricane situation. But the truth is there, the roots are still alive, and all of us, little by little, each of us in our own different journeys, we're all like discovering those roots little by little, each one of us. And some of us discover it early on, and other people like me discover it a little bit later on. We're still discovering. So we're all discovering. So these truths about motherhood today, it's very much like that. Like, this is the beautiful Catholic teachings about motherhood that have always been there. But 50 years ago, 40 years ago, they were all ripped out, like trees just ripped out of the ground and flung. And so women have been living in not knowing how to be moms, not knowing the beautiful like vocation that they have. So, but Rosie Gill, she was able to be reconnected to those roots, and then she was able to live that, rediscover and restart that beautiful Catholic teaching and put it into practice, which she did her whole life. And then she shared it with so many families throughout her life, and now her own family, and now through this book, with many families. So, but now it's just a matter of us hopefully, being able to receive these teachings, and then of course, and then for all of you to live them, and then for all of us to try to pass them on for the next generation and everything like that. We have to kind of rebuild from ground up. So, anyway, does that make sense? Yeah. So anyway, I thought it was for me like just a beautiful. That's probably why this book was so powerful when I read it, because I was just like, it was just like discovering the beauty that has been lost. That we if only we had known, if only some people that we know could have known all of this beauty, and this wisdom. So anyway, well, so let me see how much time there is now. That was a long introduction for me. So anyway. So a couple of things that impacted me really quickly, but I'm looking forward to hearing everyone else today, but just a few things really quickly. Rosie Gill, her great openness to life. She had 8 children, 4 boys, 4 girls. So already right there, a great example of openness to life. She did know how to use natural family planning, and my understanding is that she and Mr. Gill also even taught natural family planning to many couples, which is beautiful. But at the same time, she was super open and generous with life, and they didn't use natural family planning as like in a kind of a contraceptive way, in the sense of really wanting to limit children. That wasn't their attitude. NFP is beautiful to know and very helpful in many serious situations, but the overall attitude we want to have is total openness to life. And besides, they also raised other children too, I believe, like foster children, which is beautiful. So a great example of openness to life, especially when right now, like someone told me before this conference today, how like Roe versus Wade is all, going on in the news right now, and like abortion is like the greatest possible attack against motherhood possible. So this is like kind of providential that we're having this little talk today about motherhood, when motherhood itself is like in the balance, so to speak, in our country. And but anyway, along with that, another thing that just was so powerful for me was just like, was her love for femininity. As she says many times in the book, like she loves being a woman, she loves being a mom, she just loves her vocation. And that's so beautiful, because like one of the big errors nowadays is like feminism, which is really a distortion of femininity, just like machismo is a distortion of masculinity. And God made human beings male and female. Those are spiritual realities. They're biological realities, but they're also spiritual realities. They're distinct, they're beautiful, equally in dignity, but distinct and complementary. And so obviously our culture, because our culture is rejecting God, it's also rejecting any kind of spiritual significance to male and female. If God doesn't exist, then it's all just arbitrary. It doesn't make any difference at all. Male and female, it doesn't matter. It's just whatever, because if God doesn't exist. But if God does exist, and he created human beings in his image and likeness, that means, and he creates intentionally male and female, then those do have spiritual realities, and they both, in unique, different ways, reflect the image and likeness of God. But women have lost that understanding. Men have lost that understanding. Again, because of the whole hurricane that came in, men don't know what it means to be men. Women don't know what it means to be women. Everything's kind of confused. But she did know, and she loved being a mom, and she loved being a woman. And that comes out so powerfully throughout this book. That might have been one of the most beautiful things for me now that I think about it. And so maybe other people today will be talking about that. But just so many things. Anyway, I have a list of different things, but I'll just say a few of the things. But dressing like feminine clothes, all of fashion. That's one way. The hurricane has destroyed everything. In fashion is one of the big ways I think that's where we can see that devastation. Girls grow up dressed in a certain way, not knowing how did girls dress before for 2,000 years. They don't know. Everything got lost. She loved teaching her daughters she loved to sew, and she loved teaching sewing, beautiful motherly things like that. How many moms know to do that or teaching that to their children? Beautiful, these little things, but I felt like they were so powerful. Or playing with dolls. She talks about the importance of for little girls to have dolls. Girls love dolls. Is that true when you're girls? I don't know. Do you still love dolls, girls, when you're little? Well, but God made girls to love dolls, just like God made boys to love soldiers. When I was a little boy, this is kind of embarrassing maybe, but I loved playing with G.I. Joes for years and years and years, all throughout grade school. If you came into my room, it was armies and G.I. Joes everywhere. Just ask my mom or dad or my brother. I was super into G.I. Joes and and all this bombs. It's just that's how I thought. Sometimes my mom or dad would go away for a weekend or something, and they come back, and the house is covered with military bases and their bedroom and stuff, and it's so. That's just what I liked. That was a boy. They liked soldiers and all that stuff. So, but girls, it's different. And then it's dolls and taking care, and all these. It's very motherly. So whereas guys, are fighting and protecting and all that stuff, and girls, taking care. Anyway, so it's just we're different. And she knew that, and she rejoiced in that. So, and then of course, two more things, and then I'll stop. And homeschooling was one of the big teachings of this book, homeschooling, the importance of the mom being at home to really be the heart of the home, but also to be the number one positive influence with the dad, but the number one daily positive influence for the children, to teach them how to be human and teach them how to be Christian and to grow in every aspect of their life. And that's really one of the big teachings of this book, and it's kind of summed up right here in this little sticker that I found back there with Mr. Gilbrad. It pretty much says it all. So it says, motherhood, the most important job you'll ever love. The most important job you'll ever love. So that's pretty much sums up a lot of Rosie's and the traditional Catholic wisdom. Motherhood is the most important, most beautiful job of a woman. Maybe also along with spiritual motherhood of being a consecrated sister. Those two. It's more important than being the president of the United States is being a mom. That's much more important. But again, women have been and men have been all confused about this, and so women feel like they have to go to the work, career, university, workplace, but they're that's how they must make their mark or everything like that. And maybe for some that is, but remembering that, but they probably don't. Many of them don't realize probably that the most powerful way they can make a mark and the most beautiful way they could affect society is by actually becoming a mom and living out, if they are moms, and living out their vocation as moms. That's the most powerful way they're going to be able to help the world. That's one of the main teachings I would say in this book. And not everyone can homeschool, of course, but for economic reasons or for there's a lot of single mom, families. So, but where it is possible, though, it is that Rosie Gill, I think, would be encouraging as much as possible the moms to consider to homeschool. We have a beautiful school here too at Holy Innocents. If you do have children, which I would recommend as well, but definitely homeschooling as well is probably even better, because the mom just has that special relationship with the children to teach them. So, and lastly, and then I'll just stop, and I'll talk about this more probably later in the homily because there's Mass today, but everything that Rosie did was always based on helping her children to get to heaven. And that's really the ultimate goal of our life anyway, to get to heaven. And that's what was the underlying, as far as I can tell, reading this, that's in every page. It's always the importance of teaching the children the faith and helping them to be on the path to heaven. And homeschooling, even if people are going to homeschool, that's the number one reason. It's to get your children to heaven. And that is the priority. Like, our world's going crazy, our world's cuckoo, and people don't know the path to heaven. And children and young people don't know the path to heaven. But one of the reasons why is because the parents don't teach them. That's the big reason why. The parents don't teach them, and the mom and dad are their number one teachers. And the mom has such a special influence to help the children on the path to heaven, if only she would live out her vocation. So it's like all there if she just lived it out. So anyway, those are some of the things that stood out for me reading this book. So, but now we'll get to listen to more of the details of that in the rest of the day. So anyway, thank you all for being here, and I hope you have a wonderful day. And I'm excited now to listen to everyone else right now. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Father, for your spiritual fatherhood to all of us as mothers and wives, as young ladies. It's a blessing really to receive this encouragement from a spiritual father like Father Robert is for all of us. And just to see really and remember that those beautiful teachings really did come from our faith. It's just that they've been lost. And this is just an encouragement, such a good encouragement from Father Robert. And now it's such an honor to present our next speaker. He's actually the husband of Rosie Gill, Mr. Gill. He is a dedicated father to 8 children that he procreated with Rosie, and I believe 42 grandchildren and counting, if I'm not mistaken. And Mr. Gill is so generous to go out into the states, especially our state, so much need, to come out and just share his life with Rosie and what it can teach us, what can leave us, the wisdom that he has from actually living out the vocation as God designed it. Something really beautiful that he shared with me is that when they moved from Louisiana to Alabama, they actually founded the first Catholic homeschool program with Mother Angelica. So that's something very amazing. There was already Protestant homeschooling, but they brought on, in addition, the Catholic homeschooling. So that's an encouragement to all of us. So, Mr. Gill.
Oh, excuse me. Does this fit in here? No, it doesn't. I'll have to hold it. Okay. The young lady just spoke. She was telling me that Father was going to pick me up about 9:30. And she said, he's tall, young, and has blue eyes. I said, you're describing me. It'd be easy for me to see him. Why y'all laughing? I have blue eyes, okay? I wanted to be a comedian, but there was no money in it, so I had to get out of it. I'm trying to find a place for all this. Father gave a wonderful talk. In fact, he didn't leave me much to say. You know, he summed it up in just a few minutes. I'm glad to be here and be able to share a story of my wife. And if you don't hear me, wave. And if you have a question or you don't understand, wave, let me know, okay? I think we can put in clarification for things that I said that you might not understand. There was a book I'd read, John Sr. wrote, and he talks about in England, they had this coachman back in the 1800s that would pick up like a taxi cab, and it's with a horse. And it was New Year's Eve, and he was picking up people, revelry people, and celebrating New Year's. And he never could get a word in. People just wouldn't listen. And he was tired, and the day ended. He brought his horse back to the barn, and he told the old horse, he says, "No one knows my son died tonight." And so that's kind of what's happening today. We're just having so much fun, and no one knows, or no one listens that we're dying. We're a culture that's dying fast, and we have to be regenerated. We have to have a reason to live more than for fun, money, entertainment, and that's what I'm going to try to show. And I hope that you are listening about, that I don't have to tell my horse after it's all over about what I was trying to say. But once I get going here, Bishop Sheen, one of the great speakers and very great mind. In fact, anybody heard of Archbishop Fulton Sheen here? Not too many. I shook his hand back in 1975, and that makes me special. And he said, I'm trying to get my thoughts clear now, that when communism is going to take over America, and he will not have to shoot anyone. He says all you'll have to do is going to have a rope that they can hang to one or two that's going to go against communism. I think we're getting close to that right now. We're just falling into socialism, and we're just going along having fun, just enjoying ourselves. In the about 60 years ago, in the 1970s, not long after we were married, Bishop Sheen said that we're at the end of Christendom. And I said, end of Christendom? Not the end of Christianity, but end of a Christian civilization. We're not living in a Christian civilization. When we have to fight to try to get abortion stopped, that's not a Christian civilization. When we have men that want to be girls and girls that want to be men, that's not a Christian civilization. And then the government supports it, encourages it, and intimidates you if you don't accept it, and teaches it in our schools. That's not a Christian civilization. So we need to wake up, like that coachman was trying to do, and listen. We're destroying ourselves. We're going along with the evil in the world, destroying. Y'all might have heard of Vladimir Lenin. He was a Russian revolutionist that got rid of the king, Tsar of Russia, and had a whole new country. And this lady interviewed him back then, and this was said, I read this. He said, he wants to abolish the shameful humiliation imposed on women by men. Housewives treated like slaves, suppressed, worn out, doing petty, unimportant trivialities. Freedom for women from the old household drudgeries, so they can be better educated like men and exercise their full potential out in the world. And children, they can be brought up under the more favorable condition by the government in their own schools. Doesn't it sound familiar? And this was a communist dictator taking over Russia. Well, I think we know what's taking over America. Jesus says, "Get behind me, Satan," and we need to get Satan behind us. Communism destroys the family, Bishop Sheen said, with a gun. Communism. Socialism, capitalism destroys the family with a smile. Y'all understand that? Capitalism has much danger, even though that's our system, and I'm not against it. but it has to be controlled, and no one's controlling it. Everything is entertainment and fun and wealth, and it's hard to follow Christ this way. Okay, it distracts us. It makes having a career and making $200,000 a year more important than having babies. That's capitalism. Okay, and it's a dangerous disease that I have, and we all have, and we don't know it. We have to fight against it. And a lot of times, several people today, yesterday told me, they like to move out in the country. They like to find a few acres on a piece of land and get out of the big city and all this stuff. And we did that. I live on about 100 acres of land in a log home, okay? And we built. And I just don't have a beard. And but I do wear blue jeans. I do this for Rosie, because when I talk about her, it's so important that I want to dress like it's important. So I didn't wear my blue jeans. Big business has taken control over the culture. In Indiana, some years ago, when they started pushing transgender, Indiana said they would not. And they said they were going to pull big business out of that state. They did the same thing to Arkansas. They refused to, and they had to give in to keep companies in their state. So it's not just the government, but big business is pushing all this. And you get down to the root of it, it's evil. It's Satan. He's destroying the way we think. What is it? What do you call it? Politically correct. I was trying to think of the word. Politically correct. That is so intimidating, and you don't even realize it. You don't want to act different than what they're saying on the media or they say in the movies, okay? You just go along. Our young girls and boys just fall in the trap. If I go back 60 years, yes, in high school, I graduated from a Catholic high school with nuns with the full habit. But as a senior year, they would get some girls that had graduated previously, a year or two before, and they were college girls. And the nuns would have them there and just praising them for their going for a career in college. I never thought anything of it, okay? But these nuns didn't know better. But they actually were thinking that they want girls to have a better education, like the man does. I didn't have a college education, though. And so they build this up, and all they're doing is pulling mothers out of the home, and they didn't know that. I don't think these sisters had an evil intention. They were just going along with the system back in the 60s, in the 50s, okay? A higher education for everybody. Rush Limbaugh, everybody heard of Rush Limbaugh? Maybe not in California. but he didn't have any college education. He started as a freshman and got out before the year was over. And one of the greatest brains we had in the media today, okay? Sometimes we think that, you get this education. Well, I'm going to tell you more about education by all the people that read Rosie's book, mothers that left their careers. They realized they were cheated. They were misled. And, I usually just talk without notes, but I wanted to cover certain things, so I got to keep looking at my notes, because I will go off in all kind of areas, and I won't cover all the stuff here. And you'll say, well, Father gave a better talk than you did. And so in churches, in local churches, probably in California definitely, but they have priests at the time of graduation get up there and they bring 2 or 3 girls on the altar and say, they got scholarships to go to the University of Alabama. Whoa, and a lot of the congregation claps. What about the mothers? Girls are afraid to say they're not going to college. Even in homeschool. I ran a homeschool organization since 1982. Okay? We were the first homeschool family in Louisiana. And you know who told us about homeschooling? A man from Fresno, California. So California influenced our life. He was going around giving talks about family and pro-life, and we invited him to stay at our home, and I didn't really know him. My wife just read about him. And he said, y'all have the right to have homeschooling here in Louisiana. I helped him write the law. I said, what is homeschooling? He says, well, you teach your kids at home. I said, how can you do such a thing? And that's where it started. We started, and within a few years, we had hundreds of families in Louisiana that was homeschooling. We had an organization called St. Francis Academy. We couldn't use Catholic. We always call it St. Francis Christian Academy because the bishops would have tried to stop us. I promise you. We were going against Catholic schools, okay? And so that's how we got started. And we cannot will back a Christian culture. We have to live back a Christian culture. You can't just pray and God will change. Each one of us has to make a decision to change and to do what is correct and not go along with the media, with the movie stars, with the government leaders. We have to know what is right and wrong. And we've been duped. We've been lied to. And I've been lied to all my life by people in the church. And I'm tired of that. You know, I'm seeing it produce what's going on today. You know, hardly nobody goes to church now. Very many Catholics. Very, very few know their faith. What Father was sharing, it just blew my mind, you know, how you can go through your life as a Catholic church and not know the importance of reverence, of piety, you know, the respect that Jesus deserves, the beauty of the Latin Mass. I was raised with the Latin Mass. It changed probably when I was about 22 years old. And I forgot the Latin Mass because it was all something new, and the church never leads you wrong. Just follow the church, but it was leading us wrong. A lot of errors was put into the Catholic Church, and reaping the benefit, the damage, should I say, from it. And the same thing with motherhood. If priest was like Father Robert throughout parishes throughout the world, the United States, you wouldn't have abortion. You'd be educated on the beauty of motherhood. There's nothing wrong with girls going to college, although it prepares them for a career. And the greatest career is motherhood. Motherhood is a greater career than even being a nun, because you're bringing babies, you're bringing people into the mystical body of Christ. You're hopefully raising children to fill up heaven. It's just a great vocation, and I want to share more of that with you as I go. The birth control pill was just terrible. Father mentioned about us teaching natural family planning. We didn't practice natural family planning, but they had people. The good priests at the time were trying to keep young couples off the pill. Okay, and so they came out with natural family planning, and they asked us if we would do it, we would teach it. Rosie would not. You're supposed to be a kind of a counselor when you're doing that. Rosie would not counsel anybody how not to have a baby. She would send them to me. She did not want to do that. Okay, and but we felt the need, and we were very traditional in our teaching of natural family planning, because it's a beautiful teaching a woman to know her body and how everything works. But it can be used selfishly, okay? And our babies came naturally, okay? She breastfed, and so that kind of sped 2.5 years between children. She took in 8 foster children, and we converted most of them, and she homeschooled them. I'm going to read a letter that one of these girls years later, when she wrote Rosie on Mother's Day. But Father Fidelis Albright, he was a German Franciscan priest. When I knew him, he was 60 years old. He died at 64. He died young, like Rosie was 62. If those who know Mother Angelica, I know of Mother Angelica, Father Fidelis mother's like a Father Fidelis. Mother was an Italian, Mother Angelica. Father Fidelis was a German, but very, very orthodox, very militant, very passion to teach the beauty of motherhood in the 60s, when there was all the sexual revolution going on. He put together this program. He told me he studied 2 years reading 100 books from all walks of life, doctors, nurses, things of philosophies, traditions, things of ancient history, of all that about mother. And he put this program together he called it the Femininity Program. And it was 4 hours for 4 days. he didn't want the mother to go away from the home, so he just had it for 4 days or 4 hours because he didn't want it to be like a weekend where they'd be away from home for 3 days. That's how he appreciated the home life. And so we had just married, and I knew Father Fidelis, and I asked Rosie to attend the class, and she was excited to. Now, Rosie was a cheerleader in high school. She was class beauty 2 years, junior and senior. When I married her, she drove the MGB sports car from Europe, okay? And the first thing I did was sell her sports car. I wasn't going to have my wife running around in a sports car. So she was born and raised in the swamps of Louisiana, though. Her parents were very, very homesteadish. They lived off the seafood from the swamps. And I had to teach. Y'all heard of crawfish? Anybody hear crawfish? Louisiana crawfish? Crawfish walk backwards. So that's one thing I had to teach my wife is how to walk forward because she was used to being around crawfish. I'm sorry. I shouldn't be joking about her. I would pick at her like that, though. And I had to buy her a pair of shoes and stuff like that. Father was from Cincinnati, and he gave this class, and it just overwhelmed Rosie, the beauty of motherhood. She was a good person. Her parents did not practice Catholic faith. Her daddy was not a Catholic. Her brothers and sisters. Can you still hear me when I pull it back this far, or it goes away? Can you? Or you have to be this close? No, not that close. Okay. Okay. And so Rosie started praying the rosary in a family that didn't know prayer at 8 years old. Her catechism teacher told her, it was a priest that told the class how to say the rosary. And so he gave them a rosary and a little prayer book that shows the pictures and the mysteries. And that's how she learned to say the rosary. And she was so impressed. She kept it by her bed on the windowsill, and every night she would say the rosary as a kid. Now that's pretty good, okay? And so she had that devotion to the Catholic faith. One time the priest told him about missing Mass on Sunday is a mortal sin. And she didn't know that. Her parents, nobody went to, they lived 3 miles out of the town, and they lived down a gravel road. And so she told her mother that I have to go to Mass. It's a mortal sin. And her mother said, well, we can't pray to you. And she said, okay. So she started walking to go to Mass. And she said her mother picked her up about halfway, but she never missed Mass again, other than maybe sickness. So God had talked to her. I don't mean talk to her like I'm talking, but it inspired her as a child, for her faith. And so she had stuff to work with as a young girl. Bishop Sheen says, education once seemed a gateway to heaven on earth for everyone. Now we have tried it, and we know that schooling alone will not save our society. In fact, right now I say it will destroy it. Never before was there so much education, never before so little arrival at the truth. The 20th century, now the 21st, is a century of the greatest attempt to universalize education in the history of the world, and yet is a century of the most terrible destruction in history. We have stuffed our children's minds with facts and neglected to teach them how to live. Archbishop Fulton Sheen, venerable Archbishop. That is so, so true, and that's why when we heard about home education, homeschooling, that we jumped with it. And Rosie had already taught our first child. At the time he was my oldest child was 7 when we found out about homeschooling. But Rosie had taught him how to read at 4 years old. So she knew all about teaching, so she jumped right into it. It wasn't intimidating to her. The holy priest from Boys Town, you might have heard of Father Flanagan in Nebraska. He says, there is something lacking in the kind of education which teaches a youth how to make a living, but which does not teach them how to make a life. You can make all the money in the world and be miserable. You couldn't keep your spouse. Just terrible. Money doesn't bring happiness. Money is a tool that can supply us our needs, but we all want more and more. There's never enough. Never enough. No matter where you're at, who's a man that just bought Twitter? Schwab. I mean, he still wants more. Worth $27 billion. And so we cannot will back a Christian culture. We have to live it back. How do you live it back? You have to learn how to live it back, and you have to practice it. You have to change your way of thinking. We have a magazine that's put out. It's called Rosie, We just finished the first year of it, and it's real popular, and it's the most beautiful magazine you'll come across. We have some samples, and you can subscribe to it, because you have to have good stuff coming into your home where you can read about beautiful stories about motherhood, and it's kind of funny because I'm not promoting education, but you know that most of the writers for the magazine have PhDs, and their mothers that left it and came home. And so I don't want to sound like I'm contradicting myself, but these mothers who, one was assistant dean to Brown University in Connecticut or somewhere there. I mean, she was really high up, and now she writes for the magazine, okay? And she goes to the Latin Mass. And she was doing, she pretty much lived the way you said you did, until. But, let me see my books. I have a problem. I use two hands, and I have to hold this, and I'm having a hard time. And this won't fit in here, right? Huh? What? It does fit? Oh, it's like putting a girdle on. Oh, thank you, Father. I said, let's see, maybe so. Hello? Did I turn it off? Testing. Yeah, y'all saying, yeah, he's talking about education, and he needs to be educated. Can't even fool a mic. This is not in my notes. I met a guy that my sister's funeral in Louisiana that I grew up with, 6 years old, all the way through teenagers. After we got married, he stayed in a little town, and I moved away. And he heard that I was publishing a magazine. Publishing a magazine? You couldn't even spell cat. He says, I said, well, I got a lot of smart people working under me. And I said, the computer spelled for me anyway, Those little lines always coming up when I'm writing. Red. Let's see. They said they gave me a timetable. I said, oh my gosh. Just joking. Okay, in the book, this doctor, man, PhD also, Dr. Borst, he says, most people think saints are overly devout and pious people who spend most of their lives on their knees or walking around with their hands folded and their eyes cast downward. Such depictions only make sainthood less interesting and seemingly unattainable for ordinary people. The world needs laymen and women who have confronted the world in such a way that they transcend everything, everyday things, and inspire ordinary people. Mother Angelica, I was friends with Mother Angelica, okay? And she would say, these authors that's writing the lives of the saints, they ought to spend 100 years in purgatory. They make saints always walking on water or floating around, and it takes away, well, I'll never do that, can do that. It makes it so it's unattainable to be a saint, And Mother Angelica was a saint, in my opinion, but she was very human. When they were building the monastery, I'd go with her to look at it when there was a construction coming on. She has a big, huge monastery built like in the 13th century. And she would go to Mass to another monastery local because she lived in Birmingham, and the monastery she was building was an hour north. And so I'd see her, and one day she was getting out of the car, and at that time she was walking with crutches like this, okay, because she had been paralyzed young. And she was red in the face. I said, what's wrong? She says, they're not doing their work properly at that monastery. They're just wasting time. They're wasting time. And I didn't want to get her upset. I said, well, what did you do? I gave them hell. I said, you didn't give them heaven? No, I didn't give them. They need hell. That's a human being. If you think that, I'm not saying we should use profanity or anything. Hell's not profanity. I'm saying that we get angry and all this stuff, but it's desire to control this, okay? When we say motherhood is the best profession, the greatest career, we're not saying, she's just going to be in a little white apron and everything's just wonderful. No. She'll be up this deep in diapers. You don't have that problem like when I was little. You had diapers, but you had to keep washing, You couldn't throw them away. And so they were up deep in diapers. But it's a tough life, but life is tough no matter where you go. These mothers that have careers and have children, they're up to here in trouble. The stress of the job, the stress of the career, the stress of trying to raise children, or whatever they have to do, you know. And so life, no matter where you go, but there's a fulfillment in motherhood that no one else can give you. No job will give it. If you're a mother, no job can give you that fulfillment of having children and raising them and loving them. And I'm going to share that through the book as we go, hopefully. Grace builds on nature. Thomas Aquinas said that. Grace builds on nature. Now, I don't want to get y'all upset, but if you have a bull, you can try as hard as you can, but you're not going to get milk out of that bull. If you got a rooster, you're not going to get eggs from that rooster, okay? And you can do all you want. Grace builds on nature. Roosters does not lay eggs, and bulls do not give milk. And the same thing with human beings. There's a certain way that we're supposed to live like human beings to find fulfillment and know that we're really doing the job the way God wants us to live. We have to know better than what they're saying out there in the schools and in the media and taking all these gender messes and all that. It won't happen. There's no happiness. It's destructive. It's destructive to the human mind and the spirit. What's happening, there's a book that was written by G.K. Chesterton back in the early 1900s. I think it's called A Man Called Thursday. And he talks about the inner circle. He's talking to this guy, this policeman's talking in the park in London to this man that's just walking around, and he's telling him, he says, we policemen have to be philosophers now. He says, because our real enemy is in the inner circle. He says, all these people that's on drugs, alcohol, the man that marries, a bigamy marries several times, you know, and all this, he says, they're just being used. They're not the problem. The problem is that inner circle. He says they're the mind, and they control everyone. They control the outer circle. They call them useful idiots. Okay, we just listen to that inner circle, and we think that we're free, but we're actually being controlled. We're actually being controlled. And it goes through about how dangerous. Now, can y'all see that today? I mean, you can see the inner circle. You can see what's happening in Washington, D.C. You can see the control and that the schools have and what the governors have and all this. And we feel like we can't get away from it. Well, people are moving out of states that control them so much that they don't have the freedom to raise their kids the way they want to. And Alabama is being filled. I mean, people are just moving in Alabama from all over, all the large cities. We're getting people because they're talking about the schools. They have to expand some of the schools because they have students coming in from other states. We have to have an environment that is helpful, a culture, you know, that will help defend our way of believing, way of living. And God said in Ezekiel, he said, I will sprinkle clean water upon you to cleanse you from all your impurities, and from all your idols I will cleanse you. I lost my place. I saw her walking up here, and they said they're going to tell me when my time's up, and I didn't know she was getting ready to tell me, but I've only been 20 minutes, so I'm in pretty good shape. I will give you a new heart and place a new spirit within you, taking from your bodies your stony hearts and giving you a natural heart. I will put my spirit within you and make you live by my statutes, carefully to observe my decrees. I'm not putting down any mother or any woman, but there's a lot of stony hearts around, okay? They're hardened. Father was saying about G.I. Joe. When I was little, it was cowboys and Indians, okay? And that's what boys do. And girls usually play with dolls. I had a relative of mine in Louisiana, and it was so sad because his children went to the Catholic school, and this girl was in 11th grade, one of his daughters. And he was so happy, so proud. His daughter won championship in a wrestling match with girls in the Catholic school. I don't want to marry a girl that can beat me. Put me down in arm wrestling. And she wasn't she was an attractive girl. She wasn't tomboyish looking, but she won state champion in wrestling girls. Oh my gosh. And I just, I couldn't say congratulations because I couldn't say that, and I didn't want to hurt their feelings. But boy, talk about a sick mind. I mean, we're just destroying our little girls. We're destroying. No one is teaching natural truth. Only relativism. Look, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. If that's what you believe, that's good. Be yourself. Have it your way. Boy, did we make a mess out of it. We need to have it God's way. Our little bodies they were lent to us, okay? Lent to the parents to take care of these little children. He wants them back. Hopefully he'll get them back. But we have to raise them the way God wants us to. We can't. And there is a truth, okay? There is a capital T, a truth. And there is bad and evil. And we're getting more bad and evil through the world than we get in truth. Father, I'm not talking about you, but you won't hear it in your church. You won't hear it from the priests. Most priests don't know about family life. A lot of them, their mothers worked. I'm not putting down mothers at work. I'm saying we don't have anyone teaching us. There's no pope and no bishops that I know of that are teaching proper. We don't hear it. And so they had this old man come up here. I don't know who he is, but he comes up here and tells contradictions to all this stuff that's going on, okay? And a little lady that died at 62 years old that wrote letters to her daughters, and now it's got published, and people say, wow, and leaving their careers. And we seek truth, and like Father said, it's something that resonates. You kind of, even if you hadn't heard it, you kind of say, hey, that makes some sense. That kind of means something. I can see how it could have an effect to our life. We need to seek truth. What did Pilate say? Truth. What is truth? Jesus said, I am the truth. Well, there's truth about nature, okay, and we need to know that. And this, I don't know of any other book in the United States that teach the truth about motherhood as this. And I had nothing to do with it. I just married her, okay? She wrote all this without me knowing, okay? The stuff she wrote, I'd wake up in the middle of the night, 2 or 3 in the morning, and she's in bed with the light on. What you doing? Never mind, I'll go back to sleep. She would do sewing and all kind of crafts, and she would never want to interfere with her duties as a mother or as a wife. And she was a cheerful giver, and so I really didn't know all. I knew she was writing stuff because she wrote for the school some articles and stuff like that at different times, but she wasn't out in the public at all. And I'm jumping around because it just comes to mind. At her funeral, a homeschool mother that had been in Alabama not that whole long time before she died. We lived in the country, and she liked to cut grass, and she liked to work a garden, and she had a lot of flowers. And she raised children and did a lot of creative things. Her and her daughters, 4 daughters, they made their own wedding gown, okay, with their mother. And they would make their clothes, a lot of it. And they never wanted to go to town and wear them, though. They're kind of embarrassed. No, I'm just joking. Y'all missed that one. But anyway, at her funeral, it was a nice-sized church with a T-shape to it, cathedral looking. And it was almost full. And when I went in there, I said, God, they came out, the priest, not 2 priests, 6 priests and an abbot to the monastery was there on the altar, and 1 deacon. And I said, my. And one of the priests didn't like me at all. I cannot understand why anybody would not like me. I mean, I love me. I don't know a nicer guy around. Anyway, this abbot was there. And they put a quilt that she made covering, how they drape it, a coffin with a flag? Well, it was draped with a quilt. And it was so funny, not funny, but inspiring. The abbot says, how meaningful that is. I heard him saying, Well, my kids grew up, when they could talk, they start harmonizing. And so they grew up, all 8 of them, harmonizing 4-part harmony, Christmas carols and other songs. But at Christmas time, we'd go around Christmas caroling, and they would dress up, appropriate. Some looked like something like Charles Dickens, time. And they would go and we would sing Christmas carols. Well, she died the day after Christmas, the Feast of the Holy Family. And it was the octave of Christmas when she was buried. And all of a sudden it came to me. my kids were all sitting there. When I say my kids, adults, okay? My oldest son is older than father, 47 years old. But this was 11 years ago. And they were getting ready to come out and incense the coffin for the last time. And I said, Father, I said, can my children sing a Christmas song, a carol? And he thought I said my grandkids. And says, yeah. And so I said, I want y'all to sing. What? My kids, are you sane? You want us to sing, but Mom is dead right there? I said, just stare out in the open. I whispered to him, I said, sing O Holy Night. And I'm going to tear up. Everybody was crying. They said the voice resonated throughout the church. The priests were all crying. I'm crying. 11 years ago. I'm very emotional since then. I'm really a hard guy. I like to shoot. But anyway, that was so amazing to see a church full of people crying. I want them to do that when I die, because I don't think nobody's going to cry. I want them to cry when I die. I told them, I said, when I die, I said, I want y'all to pass out handkerchiefs when I die with onions in it, cut onions. I want people with tears in their eyes. Okay. But anyway, and so that was surprising, and it's surprising to my children too. But to see the church so full of people and full of clergy, and we were like sticks in the mud, okay? Because we went to an area in Alabama which is mostly Protestant, and the Catholic Church was mostly Protestant, and my girls and wives never went to mass without a veil on their head, and so I have all these four little girls going to church with veils on their head, and the priests are looking like this. Where are they from? Out of space, And in fact, my last child was actually born the year we moved to Alabama, and I didn't want the priest has all kind of preparation you have to go through for baptism. They want to make sure you don't know what you're doing. I mean, not quite that way, but anyway. And I know what I'm doing. And I didn't want to have a confrontation with the priest, because I could tell he wasn't friendly to me. And I'm not blaming him. But so I knew Mother Angelica, and I told Mother, I said, I need my baby baptized. And she said, well, we don't do baptism in the monastery. I said, we need our baby baptized. She said, okay, we'll do it in the monastery. The only baby baptized in Mother Angelica's monastery. And she cried the whole time. And Mother Angelica took little Ann crying, and the nuns were all there, and she blesses the nuns. Father, I bless you in the Trinity. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. This baby is filled with the Trinity. Okay? It's really meaningful to have a saintly woman do that. And so that was over, and I go to confession. And so I went to confession a few days after, maybe a week after her burial. And one of the priests that I went to confession to was at Mass, was on the altar. And he offered me his condolences. And he says, your wife is a saint. I said, yeah, she's a good person, really a good person. He says, you're not a saint. Now, Father Robert wouldn't do that, okay? He says, but I'm not a saint either. But Rosie's a saint. I said, thank you, Father. But I never even thought about the capital S. People just say nice things, I hope they do that when I die. I don't think they'll say I was a saint, though. But anyway, then this priest that was at EWT and Mother Angelica that helped her start a religious order, Father Angela Shaughnessy, he was the head of the Confraternity of the Catholic Mothers of the United States. And he was there 10 years, and he had met my daughter. Her husband worked at EWTN. And he was long gone, 10 years long gone, okay? So that name didn't even resonate, Father Shaughnessy. Well, he calls Maria up, the author of the book, and he says, Maria, I'm going to offer you my condolences, the loss of your precious mother. He said, I'd like you to write an article about it. I want to put it in the Confraternity Catholic Mothers magazine, newsletter. And she says, oh, Father, I'm not a writer. Oh, yes, you are. Yeah, you can write. Write from your heart about your mother. He says, your mother's a saint. And Mother told me that. I said, I don't understand that, why they say Rosie's a saint. You don't even know Rosie. And So I get his telephone number a few weeks later, and I called him. He knew who I was right off. And I said, Father, you called Maria, and you said your mother's a saint. What did you actually mean? Well, I think she's a saint. I said, Father, you don't know her. You never met her. Oh, yeah, I did. He said, she came to a retreat conference, and I was giving it, and I heard her confession. She came and talked to me, and when she walked out, I said, that woman's a saint. I said, she must have told you who she was married, huh, too? And he says, no, I didn't know you. She didn't even mention you. I said, she didn't even mention me? And I know. Now, I don't know what someone can see that in confession that she's a saint. She had to be confessing her sins. Maybe she was so pure about certain sins or certain tendencies. I don't know. But that's not the only story. Some of y'all might have heard of Father Bean. His last name is Arellano. Anybody heard of Father Bean? Okay, he's from the Philippines, and he started a religious order, okay, the Alliance of the Two Hearts. And he took over a monastery in North Alabama, and it was monks and priests and missionaries and all that. It was a monastery that went vacant. And he had read the article that Maria, my daughter, wrote. They put them in pamphlets. I got out 17,000 pamphlets. Priests were getting them for their Mother's Day at their parishes, because it was a little short story about Rosie, okay? And this priest read it, and he came up to me and says, and I didn't know him. He says, Robert. He said, yeah. He says, Rosie's a saint. I said, how do you know Rosie? She's been dead for 2 years. He says, I read the pamphlet about her. And he says, she's a saint. He says, Pope John Paul II, when we started our religious order, he was working with us in the early 90s, and Cardinal Ratzinger, who was Benedict. And he says, I was going all over the world trying to get, it was an order to help restore the traditional family by John Paul II. And he says, John Paul, the Holy Father said, you all over the world, I want you to see if you can find a traditional mother that's a saint. And he said, I've been looking for 25 years, and I found her. I said, wow. And he felt that was the formula for a saint, what they said in that little magazine, okay? And he said, I want you to go see your bishop, Bishop Baker, and tell him what I said. Well, I didn't do that. I felt like I just felt uneasy to go see my bishop. I didn't know. But anyway, eventually I did. It was about 6 months later that a priest told me I should go talk to him. And so I go in, I made an appointment, and he welcomed me nice, and he said, I told him about Rose. He said, yeah, I read that pamphlet. I said, okay. And he said, when I read the pamphlet, I said, that woman's a saint. Now, that's either a coincidence or it's God's working, okay? And he said, we need to write a book. He said, your daughter that wrote this pamphlet, he says, tell her I want her to write the life of her mother. And I brought some yearbooks. I don't know if they have yearbooks now, but back then in the 1960s, they had the book of your senior year and junior year and stuff like that, and had a lot of pictures of your school, okay, your high school. And Rosie had played some basketball and different stuff like that, and they showed her the cheerleader. They showed her on a float as maid of honor for the homecoming and all that, and they showed her class beauty, but I wasn't trying to promote anything. I was just giving information he asked, and he says, okay, and he goes to the book, and he says, okay, I want that picture of her cheerleader. I said, okay. And he says, I want those pictures of her class beauty. I said, why you want that? He says, if she gets popular, I want young people to know you don't have to be ugly and backwards to be a saint. He says, we need to see that it can be pretty and be modern to a certain degree and love motherhood. They're not coming for me, are they? Okay, all right. They're coming to take you away, my son. Anyway, and so the book has a lot of pictures in it. And I wanted to put pictures of me, and the bishop said, no pictures of you. It's really hard. If I wouldn't be so humble, I'd have got angry, but I'm very humble, so it didn't bother me. And I'm proud of that, too. But anyway, you'll see a picture of a pretty girl. And you know what's insulting? A lady got up at one of my times, she says, why would she want to marry you? I say, I tell you, I was pretty one day. When I was young, I was pretty. But I couldn't prove it because there's no pictures of me in there. All right, got y'all laughing. I know y'all not sleeping, okay? Okay, page 32, let's see. We had 8 foster children. I don't mean we had 8 children that we taught all their life. We'd take in children sometimes for 2 years, 3 years, sometimes a year. Really awful, usually very bad situations, okay? And I could tell you stories about some of these kids. But one of these little girls was 12 years old, and she was with her 3 brothers. And they never put them together. And I said, well, bring them all to me. But I said, we homeschool. And they said, oh, you can't homeschool. I said, well, we won't take them then. We only homeschool. Well, they changed the law so that we could have, because nobody wanted children. And we said we'd take all 4 of them. So we was allowed to homeschool them. And so Rosie was still having babies. I think we might have had 3 or 4 at the time, so she was still having babies. So the little girl, 12 years old, was there with Rosie, seeing about some of the babies and working with us, And many years later, she wrote Rosie a letter. And this is Rosie. Rosie wrote a lot. Rosie wrote 28 letters to her children for when they grow up. And the bishop wanted excerpts, so the book is full of her thoughts and stuff and things that happened. Right here Rosie says, I'll never forget the call I received about 4 years ago from a foster child. Can y'all hear me? Or does it need to be lower? Okay. From a foster child who now lives in the Northeast. I should have brought my glasses. She and her 3 brothers lived in Louisiana for a couple of years with us. She was only 12 at that time. She is now 24 or so. But now she wrote this a long time ago, okay? So this girl's in her 40s. And she's now married with 3 children. She called to thank me on Mother's Day for showing her what motherhood was all about. I was really surprised and honored that she called. She also thanked me for showing her by example the beauty of breastfeeding. She had even nursed twins. How courageous for a little girl so young that had flopped, who had flopped insecurely from home to home. Her courage shows true femininity. And that little girl lived with her a little over 2 years. So it shows you how you can influence people just by your life, your example, And of course, she was a kind woman, so she was very loving to the foster kids, which they weren't treated that way elsewhere. And so, mothers, every one of you girls can be saints, and it's not a dull life. Okay, you still have a good time. You still can take trips. You still can go on vacation. You can still live in a nice house, but you have to live for someone else and not yourself. And that's where you find happiness. When you live for yourself, you're selfish, okay? And I'm probably going to never finish these notes because I have a son-in-law, and he has Elizabeth, my daughter, and they have 11 children. Okay, this son-in-law is a twin, identical twin. I can hardly tell the difference between him and his brother. And his brother's wife left him. And they had 3 children. And it was devastating because they were Catholic men, and practicing Catholics, good men. And he comes a few years later, he's living through the struggle of seeing his children once a month or twice a month or whatever it is. They take turns, parents, mother and all. And he says, he said, I'm no different than you. My son-in-law is telling his brother that. He said, the only difference, now this is not pride, I married a Gill. He said, if I wouldn't have married Elizabeth, I'd be divorced too. He says, they just stick to you, no matter how bad you are, or how, they won't leave you, And that's something to develop in your daughters, to make them just steadfast, loyal. Because no matter what jerk they marry, no matter what boy they marry, they're not as cute and sweet as you think they are, okay? They end up like me. It's hard to live with people, You know, yeah, that's why family is so important, because you learn how to get along with your brothers and sisters and of all different temperaments, you know, and so you're actually getting ready for marriage or whatever your life entails, you know, to be able to get along with one another. And my girls and my boys I have 4 sons that are all adults, and they talk to each other every day. They work with each other. They help each other. The daughters, the same thing. They're not miles and miles across the country away. I have 4 or 5 of them living on our 100 acres land. You know, I have all these grandkids running all over my yard. It's just, I teach two sets of grandkids, a set of grandkids every year. Right now I'm teaching 4 of them, grandsons. They're 10, 11, 12, 13, and they come to my house twice a week, and I give them the same curriculum their mama's doing, but I teach them, and I throw in all my, you know, my humor and my beautiful personality. They receive all that. You know, I just slap them in the head every now and then, you know. And those kids love when it's Tuesdays and Thursdays to come to Granddaddy's, and they only have to walk across, you know, an eighth of an acre or something. It's not that far. We shoot pool, play chess, shoot bow and arrows, shoot a rifle, go around and look at flowers. I have those little 4-wheelers, Polaris. We get up there and travel and look at nature in springtime. And what I'm trying to do is develop and let them see beauty of God everywhere. We close our eyes. We always see is lights, you know, and flashing, come here and go to that movie and do this. And we need to see God in our nature, in the beauty of all around us, you know. And so I try to train them. So I did that with other grandkids when they're about that age. I just take the boys because the girls don't relate to me in that area. And so we need to never wear out. We never wear out. If I live longer, it's because I'm so active with grandkids and all that, because I cut up with the kids just like they do. Okay, and so we need to be intermingling with our family. So a large family helps us to get along, and because when you get married, it's not all roses. Okay, you know, and you don't want to ever leave your spouse. You want to keep that family together. You want to keep your children to be mom and daddy, you know, and so that's very important. And Rosie was like that. We were both steadfast, you know, and I'm not saying we never argued or disagreed, but it was never nothing serious, okay? And even, I don't know what you said in confession, but it wasn't serious. And so. Cardinal Manzini. Anybody ever heard of Cardinal Manzini? Joseph Manzini. Okay. He was Hungarian, and he was during World War II, and he was put in a concentration camp for 15 years, and he was a saintly man. They have him as a venerable right now. And he wrote about the mother. He wrote a book called The Mother. I don't think I brought my glasses up here. Okay, let's see. Where is that? Let's see. Okay, the book's called The Mother, and I had our bishop read that book back when we were back in the 80s, because bishops and priests, they need to know more about motherhood. That way they don't get up there. Cardinal Dolan in New York, he saying on television, his sister has better education than he does. No, his sister, who's older than him, makes more money than her husband does in New York. You know, and that's supposed to impress us. How many children did his sister have? He didn't say. He didn't ask if she was a good mother. How much money she made. And that's a cardinal of the church. And so we're dealing with men that's supposed to be guiding us, and that don't know humanity of the motherhood and fatherhood. And they're praising things that aren't bad in themselves, like high education, but are very dangerous to your career as a mother. Because when you get a profession and you spend 8, 10 years going to school for it, it's not easy to give up, especially if you're making triple digits money. And I'm going to share a little bit about some of the mothers that gave it up. But here, Cardinal Manzini said, "Man puts all his strength into his work. Not so woman, for she conserves her strength to pass it on to those yet to come. Man is worn out by his work, it absorbs his very blood, but woman moves on into the future through her children and her children's children. Man desires to conquer, to win. At least that's how it used to be. The world must belong to him. The old adage expressed it. The home of man is the world of woman is the home. At the very core of woman's soul is motherhood. All her thoughts center about this. In it she sees her greatest happiness. The more, now this is very important, the more mankind, that means everybody, withdraws from God, when we start losing God, the more mankind the more difficult man's task of comprehending and justly evaluating the proper worth of woman. The more we lose God, like Lenin, we say, oh, don't be a housewife, you're just running your life. Well, let's be something more important. When we don't have God, and we don't have a very strong belief in God, and we don't realize God has a plan for us, then we'll go along with the world. Okay? So you have to have your faith. It was just strictly a culture that kept you your way. We don't have that no more. You didn't even have to be a Catholic to be a traditional mother. That was just a normal thing. Today, the normal thing, what is it? 40% of boys, college has boys. 40% of the enrollment at colleges is boys. 60% and more is girls. Okay? So boys are not going to college like the girls are going. Okay? This is not an accident, and this isn't because these girls just want to. They have been programmed from kindergarten, nursery school, to think this way. I mean, your cartoons do this. I don't like flying. I just found that out yesterday. Came from all the way, and they put you in this big old plane. They had 200 of us in there, and I got 3 people here, 3 people there, and they all have their what do you call it, your cell phone, but the big screen. And they're all watching all different movies. You know, here, I didn't get to talk to anybody. You know, I like to talk. And I couldn't talk to nobody around me. They all had their earphones on. And I didn't have one of those things that did all that. And then I was looking over there, the man right next to me, don't know him, didn't even say hi. He just kept those things on. And these women were beating up the men in the screen. I mean, these women were way stronger than the men. They were throwing them all over the place. You know, I said, wow, I'm glad I didn't marry one of those, you know. But that is what we're watching. That's what we're seeing. And we don't realize femininity. Femininity. I remember I almost got in trouble I was following Rosie. She was in our family car, and I was behind her and it was they were working on the side of the road, widening out the road or something in town. And she went off the road, and the pavement dropped. You know, and she pulled back on, and she did it twice, but she looked in the rearview mirror. They had a state police right behind her, and I was behind the state police. And so as soon as she got over that, the lights, and I said, oh my gosh, they probably thought she was drunk, you know. and just not even thinking, I got to the policeman before he got out of the car. And he said, what you want? I said, that's my wife you just pulled over. What's the problem? I thought the police would get angry. He says, wow, you're a protector, aren't you? I said, yeah. I said, she probably got nervous, saw you in the back, and I said, the pavement. He said, well, can I ask her, let her stand up, see she's not drunk? So she got out of the car. She said, okay, go ahead. But it's an instinct of protection, you know. I didn't run or hide or whatever, you know. I don't know who that woman is. That has to be developed in boys, that protective thing, you know. And it's in them. They're ready to fight, you know. But you have to develop into something good. My girls, I would ask them to go get me, and I could do it myself, go get me a glass of water, or go get me a bag of potato chips, or put this away from me. They, from small, would serve their daddy. Now, Rosie would too. I wasn't acting like I was a king, but I was teaching them how to serve. They married, and they served their husband. And their husbands respect them because they're unselfish. I had a COVID for a little while. I thought I was dying last year. And my daughters were all over the place, you know. And I want to have it again this year. I never had so much attention, I'm telling you. It was one. And my sons would come spend the night with me because I live by myself. And I said, oh boy, I really don't care for y'all to be here, but go ahead. But the idea that they were afraid their daddy was going to die. And when I die, I don't go very far because my wife is buried right behind my home. We have our own cemetery. So if you ever come down there, you can visit Rosie. I have my own little graveyard. And I just, you don't have a few feet. Don't worry about burning my body. I want y'all to put me down in the grave. I don't want to be cremated. That is a terrible thing they allowed cremation. It destroys the temple of God. We are made in the image and likeness of God. We were baptized. We have the mark on our soul, and we're going to burn our body. I want my body to resurrect. That was always a mortal sin. Only the pagans did that to Christians, to mock the resurrection. And now, well, yeah, we can burn our bodies and put in a little jar, you know. Don't even let that be in your vocabulary. Beautiful thing of a cemetery. I had my cemetery consecrated. Several priests been there. And I could tell you a funny story, but I got to go on to this. It's only 5 to 12. And they say I can talk till 12:30. We got a long time. All right. We wanted to have our own cemetery. This man that I knew that lived up in the mountains in North Carolina, his great-great-grandfather had opened a private cemetery there. They weren't Catholic, but it was a family cemetery. And he told me when he come to my house that when he goes back home that they have over 300 in this private cemetery, family cemetery. And people from all over the United States that are related ancestors, going right on down, that don't even know the family, want to be buried there because they have connections, blood with relatives, you know. And so we designated 3 acres of our land. And when Rosie died, she wasn't sick. I mean, she died with a heart failure, and we didn't know that. And so she died when she had her heart gave her trouble. She died 5 days later. So we didn't know that, and she's going to die so quick. And we buried her in the Catholic cemetery. And it wasn't until a month or so after that I realized, oh my gosh, we wanted to have our own cemetery. And that's kind of weird to have stuff like that, okay? It's not, most places don't allow it. So I go to the county commissioner and I tell him what I want to do. And he says, well, we'll bring it up to the whole committee. And they were all for it, you know. I said, we got 100 acres of land. I got 8 kids, and half of them live there, and we want a family cemetery. And they approved it. And so she had been buried 6 months. And so I get with the funeral home, and they come with me there, and they had to have somebody from the funeral home to witness it all. And me, my sons and grandsons were digging up Grandma. We dug it up, and the funeral home had a cherry picker type thing, and they put a chain around the vault. Because in Alabama, you didn't have to have a vault. You could just put the coffin in the ground and cover it. And boy, I'm glad I didn't do that way, because it had been decayed in 6 months. Pretty bad off. Anyway, it came up with a vault. I had my own trailer, a yellow trailer, and they placed it on there, and we swept it off. I put a tarpaulin over it, bound it, and I took Grandma home. I felt like the Beverly Hillbillies, you know, having Grandma in a chair on top of the thing. We had it all dug and everything. We dug the grave. We had a whole bunch of people there. A priest was there again. They had another graveside ceremony, and she was buried right behind my house. And we do some weird things. Most of my daughters have home births, okay, and so we homeschooled, and now we have a home graveyard, you know, cemetery. Family, you know, family, closeness. When my daughters are having a baby, or daughter-in-laws, my daughters and them, they go to Grandma, they go to Rosie, and they praying for the daughter-in-law or sister that's having a baby, you know, and they feel Mama always comes through, you know, they always feel that she helps them out. And we had All Saints Day. We have All Saints party where the kids dress up as saints, you know, and all that stuff, you know, and Halloween. And they go up to the grave, and everybody had a candle, and it looked like the sky was lit up, and all these kids dressed up as saints all around. We did the litany of the saints around her grave. So the dead person isn't something scary, or a cemetery is something spooky. That's where we're all going. We're going to die, you know, and it's part of our life. Even one year they had an Easter egg hunt around her grave, or let the clover grow, you know. So it's not something that's way far apart, way far away, you know. It's something that's meaningful. Grandmama lived. They call her Grandmama, Momo. And so I'm sure if she can appreciate something, she appreciates that too, you know. And so that's what family is about, is trying to hold on to your connection to one another, and showing love and respect. And I forgot where I was at. Let's see. This here, I just wish that we had popes and bishops would be right like this Pope does. This was the end of the more traditional type thinking of the popes when I was young. This is Pope Pius XII. Y'all ever heard of Pope Pius XII? He was right before the Vatican Council. He writes, "It is not a truth at once old..." Wait, let me read it. "Is it not a truth at once old yet even new? A truth rooted even in the very physical condition of the life of the woman. A truth remorselessly proclaimed not only by the experience of the remotest ages, but also in our own time of insatiable industry, of claims of equality, sporting competition. The truth that it is the woman who must mold and nourish the family hearth, and that in this her place can never be taken by her husband." Now, I don't think anybody wrote stuff like that in the last 50 years, 60 years. This is the task assigned her, the mother, for the good of society. Good of society. Without the mother, you know why the church is falling apart or not having vocation and not having, because we're not having children. Mothers aren't home. We're not raising kids to go to mass. Okay? The mother is the need, the absolute necessity for the church. Without the mother, the church is gone. They have to have a mother in the home that's teaching her children and bringing them to mass and having that togetherness, that feeling of family, the feeling of family, not just not just sleeping there at night, because most of them don't even eat there. It's where we eat together, we sleep together, okay? And the society needs that. And he says, draw her out of and away from the family with the attraction of one or another of the too many causes which compete to win and subdue her, and you will find the woman neglecting her home. Without the flame, the atmosphere of the home cools. The family circle particularly ceases to exist and becomes an occasional refuge of an odd hour together. The center of daily life will be found elsewhere for her husband, for the wife herself, and definitely for the children. Now that's a letter written by Pope Pius XII. We don't hear that kind of stuff anymore. They're afraid to say anything about the mother being home because politically correct. You don't do that. What was it? Was it a senator or a congress lady that was wanted to be about the judge? And they asked her, can she define woman? And she said, "You can't." I didn't hear it. People told me about it. Wow. We cannot define woman. Well, I can. It's a person with a lot of emotions. They like to scream. You know why your emotions are so... Your skin is so tender compared to a man. You will feel a baby moving while you're sleeping if they're next to you. You'll feel the need of a sound of the baby, a whimper, where a man doesn't. Our babies slept with us after birth, next to their mother. And one of our boys stopped breathing in the night, and it wouldn't have been that he was next to Rosie, he probably would have died. You know, you call those, they have a name for babies dying in infancy. And so we always had, so the babies had, now when they got about 18, they got out of bed, okay? We didn't live in the... Y'all don't believe that, do you? Okay, right. But it made them so close to you, especially the girls, you know. And they do the same thing with their children. Another thing that I want to talk to the men tomorrow is that Father Fidelis taught me, taught many others, that as a father, we have the grace of headship in the family. and that every night my kids from the time infancy, I would bless their little head before they go to sleep. And so after we'd say our daily rosary, my kids would come up and I'd bless them. All the time, all the time. Even when they started dating or going out, when they come in, they'd come by my bed and let me bless them before they go to sleep. When my daughters were married, I walk them down the aisle and they kneel down and I'd bless them the last time before they were married. That's part of family. That's part of the fatherhood, knowing that he's a protector. He brings God into their life. You know, he watches over them, and then he hands them to this guy, you know, whoever he is, that you give your child to in marriage. And so it's important to have that binding, that relationship for a family. And is there anybody in here, any girl, that would like to read something for me? If she's not a girl, then it can be a woman. I don't hear a bunch of noise back there. Wow, come on. I have a granddaughter that looks a whole lot like her. Her name is Cecilia. When you stood up, I said, oh my gosh, it looks like Cecilia.
Would you like me to just stay here?
No, you got to get up here in the mic. No, you're going to, and look, come here, let me show you. What's your name?
Rosemary.
Rosemary. Rose, yeah, you like good. Okay, start reading right here. I like being a girl. I like being a girl. You like being a girl?
I do.
Okay, all right. And you're in right here, all right?
Okay.
I wouldn't want somebody up here that don't like being a girl. You know, a young married people, I visited my brother, and one of my nephews, he's married, he's got children, and he calls his wife Mom. Okay, Mom, can you do this? You know what I'm saying? You know, he's in his 40s, you know, and he calls his mom, his real mom. And they were talking about books that are out there that says, Jimmy has 2 moms. I said, well, he's got 2 moms. I heard him call her mom and her mom. So I just want to make sure you want to be a girl. All right.
Just to make sure.
It's just one page.
Okay, here?
Right there.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Speaking of that,
Okay, I will. Thank you.
no, I'll get this way. You get that way. All right.
I like being a girl. I am a girl. Thank you, Jesus, for making me a girl. I know that you did it on
Hold on.
purpose.
Rosie wrote this, okay? Well, some of her letters. And she wasn't writing about herself, although what she writes is about her. You know what I'm saying? She was writing about her daughters, what a mother should be. And she's actually telling about herself. I wanted to say that before she got up here. I'm sorry for doing that.
Oh, no,
but
it's okay.
she's the one that wrote this. And all this stuff I found later after her death. It wasn't like I knew about it. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I am a girl. Thank you, Jesus, for making me a girl. I know that you did it on purpose because I know that you have very special plans for me. Maybe you want me to be a mommy one day, just to bring up lots of good children. And then I get to cook and clean and wear pretty aprons like my mommy. Maybe you want me to be a nun one day, just to pray and pray for the whole world. Whatever you have planned for me, I know it will be so important. I like being a girl. Jesus, please help me to be a good girl. I know that I can try to be a little lady, but make me a sweet and kind little lady. I know that I can be a big sister, but make me a holy big sister, so that my little sisters can see your love in me and be holy too. I want to be good and holy like my mommy. Now, that's what I call a real girl. I mean, a real lady. I mean, a real mommy. Oh, I mean a real honest to goodness mother. I can see that she likes being a mother because she is happy and she smiles a lot. She never asks for much. She's content to do what my dad wants. I like that. She just makes life peaceful for all of us. Why? She does so many good and kind things that I know you like. Jesus. I mean really good things, and she does them all the time. Maybe she would like to, but she hardly ever complains. I know that she offers some things up to you, Jesus. I know it's because she wants to be so good like you, Jesus. She's all love. Well, okay, not all love, because I know that only you are all love. but almost. She sure tries hard to give all her love. Even on days when she is cross, I know that you still love her, because I know that you can see her trying to do her best to smile. And sometimes I see her tears, and then she takes a deep breath and says something real nice to me. I can see her trying so hard to still give. I don't know if she notices me, but I can see her struggling and trying all over to be better. And she has so much to do, Jesus. Some days I see her doing as much as 3 things at one time. She gives. From the minute she gets out of bed until she gets back into bed at night. I know it's because she wants to be so good for you, Jesus. I know it's because she tells me so. She reminds me and my brothers and sisters over and over each day how we must be so good and try to do what is right. That is why I'm so happy that you made me a girl, so I can be happy like Mommy. Now I want to be so good too. Thank you, my good Jesus.
Thank you.
Thank you.
She write letters like that and little stories for her children. I mean, so many beautiful little stories that she'd write, and even about the grandkids. And I give talks quite a few all over the nation, and the books and the magazines. And so I'm starting to hear more and more mothers who are wanting to write for their children, write to their children for later, write things about their life. My sister-in-law, I was in Louisiana, she went to school with Rosie there. She was a little older than Rosie. And she's writing, and she wanted me to read some of it. And it's so nice because she brings out little things about things that the kids might forget or don't know, and that they might appreciate once they're gone, like my children appreciate about their mother. And so it's something that you can think about, you mothers, that you keep a little diary or whatever for of your family and things that happen that are so sweet. Not long after, well, it's been a couple of years after Rosie died, but when the bishop asked for to write a book, I had to get material for Maria. Maria's my 3rd child, and for her to write, because she didn't know a lot of things about her mother. And so I started gathering information of when we were dating, and anyway, all kind of stuff. And so I was going through everything. That's when I started finding all the stuff that Rosie wrote, when I started going. And I'm still finding things. I still got boxes of papers that I know I'm going to find stuff that she wrote in there that I just don't have time because I'm really busy. And then as God wants me to have it revealed, he'll bring it out. But some of these books you'll see over there, like I'm Woman. I found this in a notebook from a 2nd grade or 3rd grade Kateri that she had. Rosie had all the kids' books and notebooks and stuff in boxes, cardboard boxes, okay, that she got year after year after year, okay, And so we started going through them a few years after she died, and I was throwing away most of the stuff that I didn't have no use for. But I just happened to open up one, spiral bound, and it had 28 pages, I'm Woman. And it was, I heard of, back in the 70s anyway, they had I'm Woman, a song, Helen Reddy, I think it went, she sang that, a feminist. And so Rosie took that, and she was writing The Beauty of Motherhood. And I said, oh my gosh, this is wonderful stuff. And so I had one of my daughter-in-laws go through it because she had a lot of Scrabble stuff. She'd write, and she'd write on the side, the papers and all that stuff. She'd scratch out and put another word, and I couldn't hardly see. She wasn't writing to be published. She was just writing her thoughts. Somebody's telling me about, she does the same thing. I'd find envelopes. She'd check the mail and it had bad, stuff, junk mail, and I'd be driving and she'd be writing on it. Thoughts come to her and she'd be writing. So I'd come across all kind of envelopes that she had. She'd try to write down her thoughts, her reflections and stuff like that. Well, that's what this was, is her reflections. And, but I came across this, her journal, and it wasn't a thorough journal. She'd skip sometimes a couple of years, then she'd write for several months, and she'd skip a year, And so right here she says, I'm Robert. She says, Robert is very motivated making audio cassette tapes for the home school. See, if I couldn't reach you in person, I'd make a tape and send it to you because I like to talk, and I just put it on. In our church parish, we got out 3,600 cassette tapes over a 3-year period that the priest would allow once a month to give out to the parishioners. And so just, I like to talk. But I have a message. I think you'll appreciate that also. But right here she says, Robert is very motivated making audio cassette tapes for the school. He needs to write a book. Now, she wrote this years and years before she died. Hopefully one day he will. Somebody out there needs to perpetuate true femininity. I pray God will give him the inspiration and grace to persevere and write one. Now that was prophetic. You know, that a book was written on femininity, and it was about her life on femininity. That's very, very, very inspiring. Here's a little bit about Rosie that she wrote in I'm Woman. I'm waiting for my flag to go up in a minute. Okay. She titled it, Please Come Home. Okay. Now, she wasn't angry, but I think she was excited. I think she was wanting to get some thoughts out. So she said, why? Why can't we see it? It is true, you know, the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. Now, I want to know, does everybody understand the hand that rocks the cradle? In other words, the mother in the home who cares for the baby inspires, affects the way the world goes. If you put your baby in daycare, they are inspiring your child, or the government is. But the mother that rocks the cradle rules the world. It's actually a poem, okay, that was written back in the 1800s, I believe. Okay, so Father Fidelis used that frequently, okay? And she says, the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world, but why? Why don't we catch on? Is it because we live in America, the land of opportunity, or is it because mothers have lost our roots? When you lose your roots, that means that the way you was developed and formed by God with that feminine character, feminine instincts deep in you, has been destroyed, has been discovered, has been smothered by the world. And so we don't know what motherhood is, and so we don't have that. That's why it's so important to have little baby dolls for your little girls to play with at 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old. I have some at 7 and 8 years old, even though they have brothers and sisters that are babies. To have that nurturing thing, nurturing desire to take care of a baby. Baby dolls is going out now. The little girls have baseball caps, baseball bats, and gloves, not baby dolls. You know, roots can go very deep and spread out into the surface. Either way, they make the tree strong and stable. And nourish the tree. Roots anchor, feed, and nourish the tree so that it is stable. Anyone who wishes to ignore the vital role that mothers play in our society today is foolish. I'm not just talking about ignoring all the sweet, pious words that we call our mothers. I'm talking about a very serious matter, the vital role of motherhood. Did you ever think of that, the vital role of your motherhood, how important you are? It's no one can compare to that. No one. You have such a responsibility, and through no fault of your own sometimes, you neglect it and you do other things and you go and you have a career, you know, and the thing that's so much more important is that child, to see the first smile, the first step and all this, and somebody else is seeing it for you. Our modern times has turned our good mothers into anything but true mothers. It is as if it is a sin to stay home. Yeah, you feel the guilt. Oh, you just a stay-home mother? Oh my gosh. No, you don't have no ambition? Don't you want to be somebody? Can you imagine someone saying that to Mother Teresa? No, you want to change nasty diapers like Mother Teresa? You want to take care of the sick? Oh, you want to take care of the dying? You want to take care of the poor? Mother Teresa did all that, and she got a Nobel Peace Prize. Don't you think it is great to be a mother and do the same? And you're doing it to your own flesh and blood. We don't think. We're not taught to think. We're only taught to listen to what the media says and the world says, and we say, yeah, that must be it. All the girls are doing it. To put on a dress instead of a pair of pants seems to be old-fashioned and not with it, and not cool. To ride down our super highways and to see the women who are driving these big, tough 18-wheelers and other women working alongside of the highwaymen doing the same job is a really sad thing. Now, to have to work is one thing, but to see the damage that the feminists have done to our good mothers and women in general is another thing. We all know that wearing a dress and working in true feminine jobs is not the answer to our ills in today's mad world, but true saintly motherhood will be the root system that will rebuild our Christian culture. Think about our root problem here. Only, and I say only if we live in a Christian culture will the ills of our society wane. Think about it. Where does goodness come from? What goodness is going to go into your children? Anybody have a Kleenex? Anybody have I don't have nothing in my... Okay, never mind. It's all right. I'll use my sleeve. That's very nice. It wasn't used, was it?
Oh, no.
That's brand new. Good.
You can have it.
Oh, you're giving a whole pack?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's the kind of stuff that Rosie wrote when she didn't have anything to do. Bishop Sheen gave a little comparison. 2 words: equality, equity. What's the difference? Okay, I'm going to give an example. Let's see if it comes out right. You're going down a gravel road. You'll have gravel roads here? Probably not. And you're going to have a lot of gravel roads. I live on a gravel road. Okay, and you have rocks. Okay, you use those rocks there. You buy them about a truckload to keep me from sinking into the mud. It gives me a little surface, okay? Now, a rock is usually broken from the mountains, the hills, and stuff like that. That's where they get and they crush it. They got other rocks, okay? They have diamonds. That's a rock. You all got diamond rings? Anybody here got little rocks on their finger? All right? They're both rocks. So I take your rocks and throw them on the road with my other rocks, and you just use the diamonds to ride on. They're all rocks, right? No. Some has much more value as a rock, a diamond. I don't throw diamonds on the road. They're special. It's a rock, but it's special. It's not like the gravel we would drive a car on. But that's the difference between the man and the woman. We're rocks, but women are the diamond in the rough. You're something precious. Motherhood. It's not like man. We don't do this. You don't do the same thing. You got much more higher job. Much more. You're bringing babies into the world for God. Okay? It's so much more. You're like the baptismal fount, where the priest is making you a new birth. You're like the baptismal fount for heaven. You're bringing babies into this world. You got to take care of them, though. You don't want them to miss out. So that's why we stay home and take care of the kids and want to be there at all their little needs. Sometimes it's tough. Sometimes you're tired. But believe me, every job is like that. Every profession, every career. These doctors, they go and go and go. You know, there's nothing that fulfills a woman more than motherhood. Don't let no one tell you any different, little girls. Don't let your teacher brainwash you or the media. You're not there to fight men. You're here to fight the evil, to fight the devil, and try to win your children's soul for God. And I'm going to be talking at 1 o'clock again. Okay, we're going to stop in a few minutes. I want to read this here, if I can find it. I don't want to lose my place. I'm jumping ahead. All right. I came across this last year. I don't remember where it came out of. Rosie wrote. How many of y'all? You might have not too, but if y'all ever seen the movie "It's a Wonderful Life"? It's a Christmas movie, okay? And it's what do you call something that stayed on in a classic? It's a classic, okay? And I watch it every year. It's funny, I don't remember the story, but I watch it every year. I have to do it. Well, Rosie took that story and wrote an article or whatever it was she was writing, because it wasn't out for public. And I think it's very important. It's a wonderful life, she says, when you school your children at home. Yes, indeed. That's just what I thought when I first began teaching my first child at home over 25 years ago. Of course, it's 1981, so it's way more than 25 years ago. Then the babies came, and the foster children came. More babies, more challenges in the academic areas. I cannot recall ever wanting my children or their academics anywhere but at home and under our own care. I am so glad of that as I listen to my children share their memories of growing up together and becoming good friends. Being separated for about 7 hours each day in the public school or even Catholic school could hardly have made them lifetime friends. I know that by my own upbringing experience in the school system. We were a large family of 7, and I see no bonding amongst us brothers and sisters. How could we? We were hardly at home or together for those few short 20 years or so under our parents' roof. Like it or not, we parents have our lovely children only for a few short years. That's why I feel that schooling my children at home is truly a wonderful life. When I tell people that I have 8 children and have homeschooled them, they usually think it's pretty special, or maybe pretty stupid, and that I'm some sort of Wonder Woman joke. Or they may just outright tell me something about overpopulating the earth with so many children. I'm sure many other mothers have experienced similar remarks and debates. If you have ever watched the movie It's a Wonderful Life, you may recall that George Bailey tells his guardian angel that he wished he had never been born, and so his guardian angel then obliges him and takes him back in time and shows him life without George Bailey. So life without Father Robert, we all important. What a shock to George. George then proceeded to beg God's mercy and to please give him back his life. God answers his prayer, and George Bailey then proclaims to everyone, "It's a wonderful life." This is the same question I asked myself just recently as regards homeschooling my own children. I wonder what life would be if we had not chosen to homeschool our children many years ago. Where would I be? Where would my husband be? What other roads would my children have taken through the years? What friends would they have today? I shudder to think that I could have taken another route and perhaps been absent of my children all their lives. My own upbringing was more on the pagan side. I had good parents, though, who had not been formed with a Catholic or Christian conscience. I chose to look to a good priest, Father Fidelis, and my husband. That's me. Okay, she looked to her husband. Now, show you how naive she was. She looked to me at 23 years old, and I was 26. I must have been impressive, right? Come on, right? But anyway, you don't know how that made me feel happy to see that. Shows I knew it, though. But and my husband to counsel me. Obeying their counsel showed me the perils of my secular mentality and helped me see the true way to motherhood. I had only heard the career side of life in the public school. Homeschooling has provided more than good memories and good sibling friendship. It has also provided a mother at home and a dad who always worked towards jobs that enabled him to be free enough to visit home during the day to check in on the kids. These visits enabled Dad to be always on top of things with the order and training of our children. Now I wonder, where would they be today had that consistent father image been missing from their lives? As adults, they all look to their dad for advice and counsel. Now that's not always true, okay? Most of the time, but not always. I wonder too, had our children not been in the home constantly hearing about God and the Catholic Church and being in the state of constant formation of conscience with the church, where would they be today? Secular thinking is not a wonderful life when trying to train and guide children to heaven. Had they been in the school system, I doubt if they would have received anything but secular talk and peer pressure. Though Father Flanagan of Boys Town made a statement years ago that sums up the goal and importance of homeschooling in my book. He said, "There is something lacking in the kind of education which teaches a youth how to make a living, but which does not teach him or her how to make a life. Yes, that is why I believe it's a wonderful life." I thought that was very revealing of her thoughts of life. Even though she had a relative short life, she had a full life, she felt, with her family. And we're going to take lunch now. He told me I had 1 minute left. Let's see if I get there real quick. Let's see where it's at. I might not find it. I wanted to end the first part with a prayer by Rosie. You know, Rosie wrote some prayers, and they're pretty revealing. Let's see, I think it's on page 130. Okay, this is good. She says, and I'll end this right here. Oh my Jesus, please help me to want for a simple life. Help me to work for heaven. Help me not to seek so soft and comfortable a world. Help me to seek simple food and entertainment. Take away my desire to want so much and to go so much. Help me to see that when I am so busy, I don't think about you, Jesus. When I am so busy, I don't pray. When I'm so busy, I get impatient with people and things. Teach me your way, O Lord. Amen. Thank you. We'll see you in a half hour. God bless y'all. I gave a talk on a cruise, a retreat cruise. And I have your attention, please? Okay. And at the beginning of the cruise, they let me give a little 10-minute presentation about the book. The book had just came out, and I'd brought 100 books with me in a briefcase, in a suitcase. And the ladies on the book, after I gave the little talk, they rushed me sort of like y'all did, and they bought all my books. And 170 more books were wanted. I only had 100. But the 100 that they bought, they read it on the cruise, on the retreat. Before, because that was the first day, and so they had 5-6 days. And now this is silly, but I felt strange. They had mothers coming up to me and touching my arm. Said, I want to touch the arm of a saint. The relic of a saint. A relic? Hey, wait a minute. But it was the funniest thing. I had a deacon friend that came with me. He says, I thought I was with Elvis Presley for a while. But the book is very, very, very wonderful to read. It's very, one lady told me she had a PhD in child psychology, and she read it in one sitting and cried, and she's the one that started the magazine up. So whatever God's doing, he made Rosie very special to be able to touch mothers' hearts, and I thank God for that. I'm going to read you some stuff real quick that I think is important to recollect on. Rosie says, we talk about bonding in relationships. Every mother knows the cry and sometimes bothersome restlessness of the toddler. Yet she also knows the tremendous warmth and affection that she should go with this interruption. So don't forget to stop what you're doing and giving that needed TLC, tender loving care, to the baby and the toddler. She was addressing this homeschool mothers who have quite a few children. Okay, she might be teaching a child in the 9th grade something, in literature or whatever, and the baby might come up to him, Mom, she says, go away, not right now, and and she says, don't push that baby away. It's more important to give that love than to teach that one little, whatever you're doing, you can stop. But that baby needs. Now, we're not talking about a spoiled brat. We're talking about just the love that a child needs. Okay, because all children need to learn how to be disciplined, and not bother. But that's what she's talking about, that tender loving care to the baby. These are really special times that you will always treasure. This is the true joy of mothering, yielding to these untimely moments of affection. Don't throw these precious moments to the wind. You will see the fruits of your efforts preserved and carried on in later years. But most of all, your greatest reward will be in heaven. So let us hang in there. And let us never forget that we are all called to be saints. One of her letters, the name of the book, See You in Heaven, one of her letters, she signs it, See You in Heaven, to the kids. Okay, and so that's where the title came from, See You in Heaven. And she wasn't dying when she said that. That was just the way she'd talk. She'd always tell us all, we were aiming for heaven. We're aiming for heaven. And so this little book can be read more than one time. It's something that you can reflect on, okay? In the back, there's places where you can make notes of things, inspirations that you have to remind you. This is a tough world, and it pulls us away constantly. We're never safe, okay? Those who persevere to the end will be saved. And that means, that's why we have the magazine. The magazine is so important, and I'm so excited, and believe me, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. But we get a lot of people subscribing to it. I had a guy, I was in a seminary for a short period of time back in 1971 or so, and it was the Franciscans, and they were really messed up. I mean, they were bad off. The order. They had this one boy, he ended up being Father Pio, and he didn't know that I said, I'm getting out of here. I didn't tell anybody. And he was telling me, he said, I got to go. I said, and he was a brilliant man, a young man, he was 25. And I said, Michael, I said, I think God's calling you. You have the spirit of St. Francis. I said, you high intellect. I said, you can fight this. And I said, if nobody good joins these orders, we will never have a change in it. And we talked for several hours. Well, he stayed and I left. And he says, you betrayed me. You betrayed. That man, he said how hard it was going through the seminary. Well, he's now Father Pio. And I got an email through See You in Heaven Books. He ordered the magazine, 77-year-old priest. I was so touched, after that many years. He said, God sent you to the seminary to keep me in. He says, because I'd have left if you wouldn't have talked to me. He said, but you left because God wanted you to be a father and a husband. But things like that, when you start reflecting on your life, you see God working in your life if you try to do His will. And so I thought of that just now. And 106. Tick, 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 tick. I hear that clock going. Here's Rosie again. Do I try to smile and be happy, especially around children? Or do I complain and entertain self-pity? Do I have a negative attitude about life? Do I try to bring others down with me? Or do I try to encourage them to be happy, to be alive? Mother Teresa says the greatest thing you can give your children is a smile. Sometimes you have to give them a spanking too, though, but a smile also. Remember the joy. I thought this was kind of. She talks about, listen, remember the joy you feel after a sickness? You feel so happy to be well again. I should be so happy to be alive. Well, she's not alive, but that's how she felt. It was so happy to be alive, that she can do. I should have an attitude of gratitude to Jesus for His love for us. We should meditate on that joy that is ours because Jesus did not leave us orphans. We should be so grateful for the gift of the living bread, the Eucharist. Lord, I do believe, help thou my unbelief. Rosie's magazine is as important as See You in Heaven book because you're going to read the book and you'll gradually forget. The world is so powerful, we lose it. When I left Louisiana, I had a friend of mine who says, you're leaving all your spiritual brothers over here and families. He says, there's a danger of losing what you have. And that's so real. It's so real. You're going into another area. We all need support daily. And the magazine was published strictly for that. And if anybody has the magazine, they know how well it is done. The stories and the articles. And they always have stuff that Rosie wrote that's not in here. We always try to bring stuff out about what Rosie's saying, the whole magazine. And so I really encourage you. It's $36 a year, and you get them quarterly. They in the 4 seasons. We're getting ready to come out with the summer. Then they'll have the fall, and then the winter and spring. The ones y'all bought, they were spring. It covers the liturgical year and the year of the season. Usually the pages have this, like Christmas year. If you see one, it's just very Christmassy, very Advent. It reminds you constantly. If one lady says, I keep them on my table, my coffee table, because they're so pretty to look at, just to have there for people to see. I encourage you, if you're excited about wanting to persevere in what you feel now, the magazine is very important. And we don't find that's very high, $36 a year, and it's 40-something pages, so it's not a thin magazine. And there's no advertisement other than we talk about the book, okay? And so it's not like some magazines full of commercials through the whole thing. Mother Teresa of Calcutta said, every woman is the heart of the family, since no man can ever really love in the same way as a woman. So that by trying to become somebody else, women lose something, and because of that, the world is what it is. The way the woman goes, the way the world goes. The way the woman goes, y'all are more effective to the world than anything else. And the feminists is the women that took over the world. Okay, and we let them. And they did it so subtle and so demanding that even homeschool girls at graduation have a hard time giving a little talk about what they're going to do when they go, now they're out of high school. Because it's so much pressure about career. Okay, motherhood, fatherhood. That's what keeps the world going. Okay, it says, my advice to women is simply stay home. A woman's first responsibility is to be the mother, the heart. This is Mother Teresa, the only one who can keep the family together. We are liberated only when we live our life to the fullness of it as a woman, and that is the greatest liberation of all. What did John Paul II tell Father Bean? Find me a traditional mother, so we can use, whether it's Rosie or not. Father Bean thought so. We need to fill the church with saintly mothers. We need saints to change the evil culture that we live in. Metaphysically, you know what metaphysically is? It's that what we do and what the world does around us affects the way we think. Okay? If we hear people that have an abortion and all this abortion, we get used to it and it doesn't bother us, right? It doesn't bother us anymore. We got used to it. Okay? There's all this homosexual stuff going on. We'll just say, oh, that's how it is. We change gradually and not so gradually. And before we know it, we're not the same person. That's why we did the magazine. Real quick. This is a letter to my daughter who wrote the book. It was a lady from North Dakota, Bismarck. I just want to thank you so much for writing this wonderful book. This has encouraged me so much in doing the most important thing in the world, motherhood. This book shows the importance and dignity hidden in the beautiful vocation. She goes about some personal things in her life, a miscarriage and all. She says, I am a doctor, but I feel that I lost so many years chasing after college and career. I never understood the true beauty of motherhood at every level, being at home mother, homeschooling my children, putting my heart and soul into every level of suffering and uniting to Jesus to find true joy and fulfillment. Until recently, thank you for writing this book. Maybe some women and mothers will not put off getting married and having a family after reading. I'm 40 years old. She's now about 45, and still hoping and praying. She got married late, 31 or so, and then she had miscarriages, and she finally had a couple of children, and the book just made her feel how much she felt in life. Her parents were unhappy and very disappointed in her decision to leave her career. They helped pay for it. She invited me to speak in Bismarck, and she invited her mother to go. And her mother came up crying and hugging me. It converted the mother, you see. And so she says, I'm so proud of my daughter for leaving the doctor, and coming home and taking care of kids. So I thank God he can work through even old people, and get people to stay. She was so happy that it converted her mother, because she had a hard time explaining the beauty of motherhood to her mother that she's missing, and somehow or another I kind of helped that out. A young girl, she was 15 or 16 years old, from Wisconsin. She wrote a long letter to our bishop saying that Rosie should be canonized. And she says, I was planning to go as a career. I don't know, she didn't say what she was going to do in college. She says, and I was determined. She says, and somebody handed me "See You in Heaven," and I fell in love with Rosie. She changed all her plans. She's married now. She just had her second baby, and she writes for the magazine. I think she's 22 years old. So that's how powerful that Rosie's story is to these young girls. And then Rosie and I gave a little mini femininity course, like Father Fidelis. My wife had such a good memory. She remembers so much of that course, 4 days, that people would call and ask her, what did Father say about this? And because the Father was kind of a person way up there to give answers. And she remembered, she could quote that priest, Father Fidelis, all her life. She could quote things that he'd say. Okay, so it was in her heart and her mind. And so people wanted us to give a femininity course. And so she put stuff together, and we kind of talked together on it. And at the end of the course, she had this. We had notes, and this is part of her notes. She said, this course could have been a course in mothering. This is where our schools are failing in America. Our own home school also, if we are not careful, will fail. They are not producing mothers. They are producing career girls. The future of tomorrow lies in the mothers of today. You've heard the saying, as the women go, so goes the nation. Father Fidelis said repeatedly in the femininity course, the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. We need to teach our boys to be leaders in the home. That's what I'm going to talk about tomorrow. The men have to protect that wife and those girls, and the girls have to feel security in a man and their father when they're little, as they grow up. Okay, we need to keep that balance. The feminists messed up manhood because men are afraid to be gentlemen. Even I can open the door. You don't need to open that door for me. Girls say, stuff. We lost so much through the feminist devil. She says we need to teach our girls to be good, kind, loving, gentle, but firm and conscientious mothers, not a pushover, okay? Not algebra majors. Teach them how to be little mothers to their little brothers and sisters. And we can say that our home is a success. For when I die, God will not ask me about what career I chose in college, but what have I done to the least of my brethren, that is, my husband, my children, and my husband and my children. And she says, God bless you. And then I'll close with the prayer, if I can find it. And I will be at the table so if people want any more books. Oh, what I want to say also before I read a little prayer. I still have some books, See You in Heaven. I had people buy cases of books at a time and give them out. Okay? Buy 10 at a time, give them out. There's a lady in Phoenix, Arizona. She bought 19 subscriptions to the magazine. 19 at $36 to give her grandchildren, her daughters, her daughter-in-laws, and other mothers she knew at church. We have to be just as apostolic or as forceful as the feminists. We have to be more, in fact. We got truth on our side. We need to help change the world by helping those around us, whether they're our friends, our children, our acquaintance, our mother-in-laws, Mother Days this tomorrow. What a great gift to give a subscription to the Rosie magazine or the book See You in Heaven. I will let books, if anybody wants 5 See You in Heaven books, whatever I have left, we'll let them go 5 for $60. Okay, that's $12 instead of $15. We usually have 10 for, which I don't think anybody should buy 10 right now because I don't have any left. But you can get them over the internet, 10 for $100. But they have people, I'm telling you, there's a lady, real quick, a lady in Houston. I was going to give a talk, and before I was giving the talk, she come up to me. She says, "How much would a case of books cost?" And I said, "See You in Heaven?" "Yeah." And I said, "Well, I have to see how many is in the case." And whatever it was, she bought right at $1,000 worth of books. And I said, she bought them, I said, "You read the book?" "No, I just hear so much about it, I want to get them out." She hadn't even read the book. She bought $1,000 worth of books. I don't know who her husband is, but wow, I wouldn't let my wife do that. But there's something about the book that's exciting, right, Father? Yeah. And we need to pass it on. And I don't have that many years to go. 20 or 30 years, I'm going to be gone. That's a joke. 20 or 30 years. Okay, Rosie, she says, "Oh, my Jesus." Nope, that's not it. That's the one I read to you. In here, they have a couple of her prayers. She says, "I love you, my God. Help me to see that the only purpose I have here on earth is to be in heaven with you one day." You ever think about that? That's all we're here for, is to get to heaven. We're on trial right now. I must keep this thought. We're not on vacation, in other words. We're not on vacation, even though we live that way. I must keep this thought forever on my mind, only heaven. I must not let the things of this world distract me from you, my good Jesus. I'm here only to do your holy will. All things I have and do come from you, my Lord. If I try to think and do what you want, I will always be happy here on earth, and I will then reach my eternal reward, heaven. I want to offer up all of my days to you. I want to please you more and more each day. Amen. There's a lady in Washington, D.C. I was passing through, and people gave me a lodging. And so the lady that was giving me a lodging was people about my age, and they called a friend of theirs, a young woman probably in her 30s or 30s, and she didn't answer. And then finally the woman answered. She was at church, and she said, I want you to come and meet Mr. Gill. And she says, she didn't say why. So the girl comes with her husband. The woman comes with her husband. And when she walks in, the lady I was visiting, she says, look. And you see how it's got roses all over it? The woman was in church, and she was praying to Saint Therese, the little flower. And she says, please help me to decide what God wants me to do. I'm a lawyer. Should I continue my law degree, or should I go home? And Saint Therese, y'all know the story? She gives flowers in her answer. When she saw this, it was roses all over it, and she started crying. I said, oh my gosh. She said, crying and crying. God answered her prayer. She left it, and she had 6 kids in homeschooling. God bless y'all. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gill. You've been a blessing to all of us as mothers, as young ladies discerning our vocation, and it's just so much wisdom and so much goodness out of what God had for us today through you. And now, as we know, Rosie has touched many lives. She's touched many of us who have read the book. She's touching your life in this moment, even if you haven't read the book, with just her motherhood and her beautiful example of femininity, of just living out the call that God had for her planned. And just like that, she touched mine too. And I'd like to begin again with the story titled, I Like Being a Girl. I think it's so powerful when the young lady came up and she read it out loud. It was so beautiful to hear her voice come to life. And she wrote it for her daughters. And I think it's a heartwarming and powerful reminder for us to live out and model our God-given femininity, and to model that to our children. Whether we have daughters, sons, you're modeling that to them through the femininity that you're embracing. So here it goes again. It's just a little excerpt, not the whole thing. I am a girl. Thank you, Jesus, for making me a girl. I know that you did it on purpose because I know that you have very special plans for me. Maybe you want me to be a mommy one day just to bring up lots of good children, and then I get to cook and clean and wear pretty aprons like my mommy. Maybe you want me to be a nun one day just to pray for the whole world. Whatever you have planned for me, I know it will be so important. I like being a girl. From page 82. See You in Heaven book. Now, we know this, that society has diminished the difference between boys and girls. And they've done this on purpose because it's obviously part of the evil plan to confuse us, where we come from, whose we are. And let's not get confused, because I think that often happens. It's a smart tactic from the devil to get confused and saying, oh, well, I'm equal to men, I have to be equal, you know. We are created equal in dignity, or dignity that comes as children of God. But that doesn't mean we have to be the same. We were made differently with unique traits to complement one another, to fulfill God's purpose here on earth and to get to heaven. So as mothers, it's our responsibility to show that to our daughters especially. How to be feminine, how to embrace our femininity. How do we do that? So I'm going to be talking a lot about that today in this small, brief talk. Much of the beauty and truth about being feminine, we know, as Father Robert stated earlier, has been lost due to the sexual revolution, the impurity brought by the fashions since the 1900s. So it's dating a while back. Birth control and sexual impurity were let loose, and they infiltrated not just society in general, but the Christian, the Catholic homes. And Our Lady of Fatima warned us. She said, certain fashions will be introduced that will offend our Lord very much. It's very profound because that was a recent apparition, if you think about it. Like 102 years ago. I mean, it sounds like a lot, but in reality, it's not that long ago. And she has been warning us, and even so more in this apparition. So first, before even thinking about modesty exteriorly, we have to look at what is interior modesty. Because we can't just, dress a certain way just because, okay, I have to be modest. It has to be interior, right? So interior modesty is, how do we teach that to our children? It's a virtue. The way that we talk, our kindness, our temperance, our prudence with our children, with others. What movies do we watch? What shows do we watch? What shows do we put on for our children? What music are we listening to? Are we listening to worldly music? Not to say that all worldly music is bad, but there definitely is a lot of content within movies, music, that is very impure, and it's attacking, through the mind, going to the heart, to our soul. So we have to be so aware of this as mothers. And most movies nowadays, not to mention big names, but I'm sure that you know what I'm referring to, are promoting gender ideology by including masculine girls with boy-like traits and feminine boys to neutralize the clear gender that God created. And why is this done? We know that it's to confuse our children from a very young age. This is it's just so corrupt, so evil, but the devil is so smart in his ways. And he does it sometimes subtly. We don't even notice because it's the trend, it's the movie that's going, it's what other people are watching, and it's okay, there's nothing bad in it, there's good things, but you really have to look, what am I showing my children? Because remember, everything is staying in their mind, everything is being absorbed from a very young age. There's another movie right now, very popular, that is promoting disrespect to parents by saying that it's open communication between child and parent. And we don't really see girly girls being portrayed in shows and movies. And it's so obvious when we talk about it in this way, but not so much when we're looking at, this content. So I think this is good for us just to remember and to see how are we sowing these virtues with our example, with our lifestyle and our family to our children, because surely but slowly what's going to happen is that this is contributing to the corruption of their little souls. It sounds harsh, but that's what's happening. Now, I'd like to share an excerpt from a letter between two Freemasons. In order to destroy Catholicism, it is necessary to commence by suppressing women. But since we cannot suppress women, let us corrupt her. From a letter dated August of 1838. Another review from the Freemasonry said, religion does not fear the dagger's point, but it can vanish under corruption. Let us not grow tired of corruption. We may use a pretext such as sport, hygiene, health resorts. It is necessary to corrupt, that our boys and girls practice nudism in dress. To avoid too much reaction, one would have to progress in a methodical manner. First, undress up to the elbow, then up to the knee, then arms and legs completely uncovered. Later, the upper part of the chest, the shoulders, etc., etc. So you could see that, I'll leave this as food for thought for you if you hadn't heard of it, but you could see that this is a very diabolical plan from the devil to just slowly, so they don't notice, so they don't see what we're really trying to do, to practice nudism in dress, which is what we see. We see that in the fashions today. We see that in celebrities. We see it when we go to the beach. It's so normal to see a girl, a young lady, an older woman in a bathing suit. We see nothing wrong with it. Why? Because we've been conditioned little by little by little. So this was their plan. And it's just coming from straight out of the devil. Now, the exterior modesty, right? Once we can internalize it and show it through our person, of course, the heart of the modesty is that. But then we reflect it with the outside of, yes, what we wear. It's important what you wear. You're portraying whose you are, remember. It's not about, I want to be in trend with a fashion, but it is very practical. The Holy See, issued by Pope Pius VI, gave us guidelines for modest clothing, which has been kind of buried under the rug, and we don't really know. Or a lot of people will say, oh, there's really no guidelines for modesty as long as you're just, not provoking in certain ways. But we are responsible as women. We must not forget. We are responsible also for our neighbor. And we know that man was created differently. He was created to delight in his wife's body in the intimacy of their marriage, if that man is called to marriage. So if you are revealing parts of your body, you are contributing. It's not just our fault as women. Men have a responsibility, but we have a responsibility too. And with these guidelines that were issued, it said a dress cannot be called decent, which is cut 2 fingers breadth under the pit of the throat, which does not cover the arms at least to the elbows. Shorter sleeves were also permitted as a temporal concession with ecclesiastical approval because of the impossible market conditions, and scarcely reach above the knees, referring to the dress. Furthermore, dresses of transparent material are improper. And now when I go more into detail with this modest dressing, please know that a lot of us didn't know this. A lot of us are not aware of this because it hasn't been taught to us. So it's an opportunity to hear it, take it to the heart, and to really just take it to what our Lord is trying to reach to us. And we can look at this as a beautiful and helpful tool to have these guidelines of, it's called like a Mary dress, like to look to Our Lady, so we can easily imitate this virtue of modesty instead of going by the trends that the world tells us. Not as a rigid rule, but as a helpful tool for ourselves and how to guide our daughters in this virtue. Because let's be honest, there's not a lot of resources that really tell you how to dress modest. Everyone has an opinion. So that's why our church is so wise in giving us these guidelines. Modesty in dress helps also safeguard the virtue of purity that is demanded by the moral law of God. And we can have a positive outlook towards modesty. We can live it with joy, with cheer. We can embrace just the girliness that God created us to have. And if we haven't discovered it yet, if we're still struggling with it, that's okay. God meets you where you are, but you also have to put your part. And you ask Our Lady to guide you. She's always there to guide us. And look at how beautifully she's dressed. So modest and so beautiful. And we have different styles, the way that I dress may not be the way that my friend dresses. You have different tastes for colors, different styles, but that doesn't mean that you're going with a fashion. It's the style that's different. And remember that the times may change, but our Lord never changes. Our moral code, our moral compass should always go towards God, not go with the trends. And for me personally, this took a while. I started veiling, just to share a little bit about my experience. It took me, shame on me, because I could have embraced, I felt the call to just wear dresses and skirts for a while, but I was like, no, that's a little too much for me. Always, there's something in you pricking, and sometimes you hear it and you're obedient and you answer God's call, but sometimes it takes you longer. That was me. But if I could go back, I would make the change cold turkey if I could, because once I embraced that, the way that I was, of course, interiorly and then exteriorly dressing, I embraced more my femininity. I didn't have this growing up. My mom did the best that she could with what she had. But when you know this truth, and you model it to your daughters, it makes such a world of a difference. For me, younger in my age when I was hitting puberty, of course, we all go through hormones, and that's normal. That's part of how God created us. But I was rejecting my femininity. And I think because I didn't have these tools, I didn't have that knowledge, that I could embrace my girliness. And now God reminds us, do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God, and that you are not your own, for you have been purchased at a price. Therefore glorify God in your body. 1 Corinthians 6:19. Now, aside from this beautiful treasure that we have within our church, we have our Blessed Mother, like I was saying, to look to in order to imitate the virtue of modesty. We know that she was created sinless, she was perfect. So we know that she's a true best role model for us to follow as mothers, as wives. And if we look at her apparitions, every apparition where she has appeared, she's dressed, covered from her head to her toes. She was, dressed with a beautiful gown, very feminine, very lovely if we look to her. And no matter the time that she appeared or the place, this was a standard that she always portrayed. And if she were to appear in our time, right now, in this time where we're living, where we have seen all the fashions there are, and it's okay to wear this and that, she would not be wearing pants. She would not be wearing the way that the fashions are trending right now. So what can we do with this practicality? Let's begin by looking at her wardrobe, and first ask our Blessed Mother these practical questions. And this is from a book called Dressing with Dignity, which is a great book too if you want to purchase it. It's on Amazon. Do I own pants that fit me too tight? Do they outline the shape of my intimate parts? How far do my blouses drop from the neckline? Am I showing my stomach, my belly button? If you have dresses or skirts, do they cover your knees even when you're sitting down? Do I own any dresses or skirts that are too tight? These are very simple questions, but I know they could be maybe even harsh if we're still wearing certain clothing of this type. But remember, God meets us where we are, and He's meeting you right now where you are. And He just wants you to know this truth so you can embrace your femininity. Now, through all of this, we're showing our girls to love being girls, innately and by example. And our sons, if we have sons, little boys, they're also going to look up to that kind of woman, to hold those standards if they're called to the vocation of marriage. You're doing it you're modeling that to both of your sons and daughters. So something about homemaking that I also want to point out, where Rosie states in her book, it's really beautiful. That's another way that we're embracing our femininity. She says, we must teach our girls how to make a home, how to pass on goodness and kindness, so that we can extend and pass on these virtues to the next generation and the next. Yes, it begins in the home and with the embedded mothering skills. This must come from the heart, the mother, the hand that rocks the cradle. We cannot build a Christian culture if mothers are sending their daughters off to careers. They must learn by our example. And just as she states it, from very early age, little girls are so drawn to doing what mommy does. I have 2 girls and 1 on the way. And they want to help, they want to contribute. Cooking, whatever it is, beating the eggs, doing laundry, helping mommy, playing with the dishes. But all these things, they're innately written in their heart. So whether they go and they become nuns or whether they become wives and mothers, these are the skills that they're going to need. And it seems like, it's just homemaking, but it's not just homemaking. It's really, you're showing her how to be a woman, how to be a girl, how God created her to be. Even through nursing your child, your little one, I see it's super cute and funny. Like Mr. Gill was saying, your daughters have dolls and they play with them, but they imitate you. My little ones, they pretend like they're nursing, their little dolls, and I'm sure you've seen it with your own too. And it's just so beautiful to see that tenderness come alive. But imagine if they weren't seeing their mother doing that. Would they really pick that up at a daycare where they pick it up, if they're being babysat by grandma. I'm not saying these are bad things, but these are things that we could be missing out if we can make the sacrifice to be, and when I say sacrifice, it sounds like, sacrifice, but beautiful sacrifice of sanctification for our children, for their souls, because what are we doing? We are trying to direct them to heaven. And it's hard to be a mother. Like, of course, every vocation is hard, but Rosie states this in her book, and it's so simple, but I often forget, and we can often forget, ask for grace, even in the chaotic days, because it's not just about doing the role. It's how are we doing the role? Are we showing them with love, with patience? Like, it's so hard. But you have to ask for the grace and ask Our Lady to help you with any struggles that you're having, whether it's yelling, whether it's complaining, And she says this too in her book. She says something about yelling to the matter, which I'm sure that most of us moms have struggled or struggle with at one point, Don't be the yelling mom, Be the mom that, yes, you could be strict, but loving, And because then you create this chaos in your own home. And with this lifestyle that you're showing through your mothering, you know what you're doing? You're sealing that in your children's hearts. You're sealing it because I see it with my own little ones, I see how they tell me, Mommy, you don't go to work because you're my mommy. You're my mommy. And I'm like, she's only 3.5, but she's asked me this, right? Why does Papi work? Why don't you work? I said, because Mommy stays with you, so and Papi goes to work so Mommy can stay. And so Papi gets, he basically provides. And this is already in her heart. So we need to reclaim our motherhood by normalizing that it's good, that it's not even normal, just good and holy to be a wife and not to chase a career. Jobs and careers are replaceable, but the mother is not replaceable. We are not perfect. We're not meant to be perfect. Only God, our Father, is perfect. But we are called to be those mothers. And if you are working right now or part-time working, take this to prayer. We're going to have Mass. And just know that if you are married, of course, for single mothers, it's a total different story. It's harder. But if you are married, talk to your husband and know that the sacrifice is going to be worth it. Now, really quick, I have none time. I'm just going to talk super briefly about natural family planning, which is another way, actually our fertility through natural family planning is another way of embracing our God-given femininity. So the devil tells us that planning your family, that having a certain number of children is basically the right thing to do because you're going to give the best life to your children. Not really, but the devil is so smart. He makes it sound so pretty and nice, like you're being a responsible parent if you only have a certain number of children. But the devil is attacking our femininity, not just through immodesty, but through our fertility. Birth control, we know, is inherently evil. Most of us know that there could be abortifacients. You could be killing your own little ones even, before they're completely formed, but at the beginning of life. But also any other method of not completing the marital act. If the very common withdrawal method, which is onanism, this is where this is in the Bible, Onan wasted his seed on the ground and the sexual was not completed. This is very common, even in our Catholic faith. We don't know this. I know because I've given talks and there's women that have come up to me and said, I did not know this was a sin because, there's no contraception there. But it is a grave mortal sin. And now the alternative method is natural family planning, which is taught by the church, and we know that it is good. It is good to know our fertility, to know how our bodies work, for a husband to know this. However, the danger comes in when we use it with a contraceptive mentality. This is so common. It happened in my early marriage. I was prepped for 6 months with marriage NFP instructor, and she thought she was doing right, but in reality, they're telling you a lot of the times in these courses that you need to postpone, not need to postpone, but you can use it for postponing or achieving. But that mentality already to postpone, you're already thinking ahead. Like, okay, well, I'm not gonna have a child in a year. I wanna enjoy my first year of marriage. Thanks be to God. God is so good, and he sent us a baby right when we got married. And after that, the devil crept in again, and I felt a fear when I had my first. I said, Lord, like, another baby so soon, like, mind you, like, being pro-life and being a counselor, but the devil is always going to try to come in between, especially in a marriage. And I was so afraid, and my husband was so reassuring. You're married to me, everything's gonna be fine. But that fear was there, and it was affecting our marriage. And I took it to prayer, and I said, God, this is not of you, this is of the devil, because I didn't have peace. And I took it in prayer. I prayed a novena to Saint Philomena, and she's so miraculous. Through that novena, I gained that peace from God, and I said, Lord, whatever your will is. And our little Philomena, Fatima Philomena, was born right after. They're only a year and 10 months apart. And I just want to encourage you, if you're going through this struggle, or it comes up in your marriage at any point in time, or if you get married one day and this comes up, for you to know that even something good, the devil can misuse. If you don't have that openness, we have to be open to life and embrace the children that God sends us, and not be afraid, because he's doing it for our sanctification. And if he's sending you those children, is because he wants those little souls to be out in the world, to be light, and to go to heaven. So God makes miracles, and let us remember that and embrace our femininity that he's so perfectly created for us. Now we are going to go into a beautiful, beautiful testimony of a mother, which everything that we've talked about today is going to come to life, and how she's homeschooling her children. She has 8 children. Her name is Karina, and she loves her Catholic faith. And here she is.
Hello, my name is Karina Espinoza. Before I begin, I'd like to thank Father Peter for letting us have this conference, and Father Robert for supporting and encouraging us to make this retreat. Also, a big thank you to Mr. Gill for flying all the way from Alabama to give these talks to us. But I especially want to thank Alma Acosta for organizing this conference, and Tony Acosta for all his contributions. Well, to give you a little background about myself, I've been married for 19 years. I'm a mother of 8, 7 boys and 1 girl, and a new grandmother to a baby girl. She's here. I have 2 sons here too. I've been homeschooling for 8 years. The truth is, when my friend Alma asked me to do this testimony, small testimony, it's going to be short, I put the phone down and I put my hand on my forehead and I said, I can't do this. My mom was right next to me, and she's like, what's wrong? And I told her what Alma had texted me, and she's like, you can do it, you can do it. And I was like, okay, so here I am. Today I'm going to share things about my life and family that I don't normally share with people, but I think it must be told so that you all can see an example of how big God is and what he can do in people's lives. So I want to begin by explaining how I grew up. I have 2 older brothers, and I'm the only girl. My mom was basically never home. My parents, although they were married, had an on and off relationship. My dad would be home for a few days or less, and then would be gone again for weeks or months at a time. It's hard for me to remember because I guess I was small, I was young, and I couldn't tell. I was really, really young. But my family wasn't unique in the area that I lived in. We lived on a street called Sepulveda in Van Nuys. And from what I remember, that area I was in was known for having a lot of prostitution. Where I lived, there was a bar and a hotel, and our apartment was right in the middle of it. It wasn't the best place to live. We saw people smoking weed and using drugs. A lot of gangsters lived around there. Everybody had a dysfunctional family. Single moms, families with alcoholic fathers, etc. I would walk to school with friends or with my brothers. I would wake up in the morning and our parents weren't there. I had to dress myself in the mornings, and we would walk to school. Many times I would walk to school by myself if the group of kids had already left, and the same would happen when I would come back home. I would get home from school and my parents were not there. I would have to make dinner for myself. We were alone until my mom would get home. My parents were not around, so I would be bullied a little by my brothers. The rest of the day, I was playing with the kids outside. I would come home, watch a little bit of TV, and go to sleep. My mom wouldn't be there for a couple of hours, but she would be there for a couple of hours, but she would have to go to sleep early because she had to go to work the next day. I remember always wanting to wake up and see my mom on her bed in the morning. Sorry. That just never happened during the week until Saturday and Sunday. But on those days, it was the days to go grocery shopping or ironing all the clothes. So she was always in a bad mood. I wanted to have a loving mother who could give me time, that would bake with me, be there with me, etc. Okay. In other words, she was never home. And when she was home, she was always in a bad mood. My mom was also always stressed because my dad was an alcoholic. I rarely saw him, if ever. I was allowed to sleep over at friends' houses. And basically, I was raised by other kids at school and the children that lived in my apartment park complex. All of the habits of all those kids, that all those kids had, I would copy. I didn't have my parents to raise me, even though we all lived in the same home. Isn't that funny? I mean, so that was my life when I was a kid. As I became a teenager, my parents got separated. They both went their own ways. So that meant on the weekend, when I could be with my parents, they were not there. They had things to do. I needed to keep busy, and so I would go out with my teenage friends. I was being exposed to alcohol, drugs, bad language, no morals, and just doing what you felt like doing. But I was afraid to be like my father. I didn't want to be an alcoholic or a drug addict. That is what kept me away from that. However, I also didn't want to be like my mother, who was always working and never home. I wanted to give my children the love that I never had. I knew that they needed it. I got pregnant with my first at age 17. When I found out, the nurse at the clinic offered me an abortion. The first thing she told me. But by God's grace, my mom had told me before that the abortion was evil. So that really stuck with me. I was able to resist temptation. I was a single mom for about 1.5 years. Then I met my husband. I got pregnant with my second child. Me and my husband stayed together. But we weren't married by the church until my second child was around 2 years old. And he's here, by the way. After that, I knew I wanted to have lots of babies and stay home to love and take care of them. But I got lots of negative opinions about this desire because I have factor V Leiden, which is a blood disorder. Also, my pregnancies are very difficult. I'm bedridden and very sick for the beginning of my 4 to 5 months of each pregnancy. So all my OBGYN and other doctors told me not to have babies ever since I had my first. They told me not to have more babies. I kept getting pregnant, and every time I got pregnant, my doctor would scold me. I would always come home crying because I would feel like I had done something wrong, but my husband will always tell me, don't listen to them. When I was pregnant with my fourth baby, my doctor was so surprised and told me, "You're going to have another one? Don't you have enough?" Not only my doctors would tell me not to have more children, my mom especially, and all my friends would also tell me not to have more babies. It was difficult to hear negativity from everyone, and it hurt me. But deep down inside of me, the desire to have more children was stronger than anything. My mom would insist on telling me not to have more babies, so I told her one day, "Then ask God to take this desire away from me." That really shocked her, and the desire hasn't left, despite everything. So, as I had more kids, they were growing older. I didn't want them to go to school. I wanted them to stay home with me, and I was sad to see them go, but I knew it was impossible because by the law, they have to go to school. I was even more sad when my oldest was going into middle school. I didn't want him to go astray and learn bad things from other kids like I had when I was younger. I was concerned for their souls, the souls of my kids, and I wanted something better for them. But I didn't know anything about homeschooling. But one summer, I wanted to do Catholic activities with my kids, and I discovered Shower of Roses. It's a blog by a Catholic homeschooling mom. And I was in shock that somebody was doing what I wanted to do. So for a whole year, I researched about homeschooling, and I mentioned it to my husband that I wanted to homeschool. My oldest was in high school and he wasn't doing good. But my husband said, "It'll be too hard for you without the kids." But I was so inspired and had such a strong desire to do this for them that I knew that God would help me. So my husband said yes, and we started our homeschooling adventure. But as always, there was opposition. People would tell me that I was raising my kids in a bubble and that they would become antisocial. In fact, it was the exact opposite. I was even surprised myself. I didn't even know. My kids are surprisingly very social. I was so excited to start, and after only 1 week, I saw a difference in my children. 1 week. I saw Rosie Gill's book at a homeschooling conference, and at first glance, I was drawn to the book. So I took it home and read it and felt such consolation. I felt like I wasn't crazy anymore, that everything I felt for so long was right, and I wasn't the only one who thought like this. After I read the book, I felt more passionate about my motherhood, femininity, modesty, and homeschooling. From then, I had a desire to share the book with everyone I knew, or at least anybody that would listen, because it's hard. It's hard. People don't want to listen. Now, I know that it's hard for women to digest Rosie Gill's message, which is to stay home with the kids and not be a career woman and to educate your children. But it is the most rewarding thing a woman can experience. To truly live out Rosie Gill's message is to go against the current, because everyone in your life is going to call you crazy. The world is going to put you down because the world doesn't want true solutions. The world wants to continue the never-ending chain of family dysfunction. Break the chain. In my life, I had to break the chain. Back when my husband and I were 2 years into our married life, my husband and I had problems. We separated for 8 to 9 months. I suffered a lot. Everybody was telling me, go party, redo your life, find somebody new. My parents and family members were telling me to get annulment, and that I had good reason. Yes, it was very tempting to annul, and I did go out a couple of times with some friends, but while I was out, I would feel guilty. I was confused on what to do. Should I look for somebody else or keep partying? But if I did that, my boys would be without parents just like I was. That was in my mind always. During the time I went to a retreat and started my conversion. But I was still tempted to just annul and forget about my husband. He was making me suffer a lot. One time I went to confession, and there was this priest visiting from Mexico. He was very straightforward. I told him my situation, that I was being tempted and I didn't know what to do. He told me, stop with that. Stop with that nonsense. You be strong and start praying night and day for your husband. Do sacrifice, penance, and prayer. Your husband would change. I don't know what happened to me that day. I don't know what that priest did to me. I know it had to be the Holy Spirit. Something just clicked in my brain. I said, what am I doing? From there on, I decided I would stay single with my children and pray for my husband's conversion. So that was exactly what I did. I started going to daily mass and offering my communions for my husband. I was praying like crazy for him day and night. And after a couple of weeks, I started receiving phone calls from my husband saying that he wanted to come back home. Even though my husband and I got back together, we were still having problems. But finally, after 4 years, my husband went to RCIA classes and started his conversion. Thanks be to God, we're still together, and we've both grown so much in our faith. My husband has truly become an exemplary father and the rock of our family. He is being the true man that God wants him to be. I look up to, I look up to my husband because he has the guts to be bold about the truth of our Catholic faith without fear. He is the love of my life, and God chose him for me and me for him. And guess what? During the time that we were separated, my dad had to come from San Francisco to live with me because I needed financial help. After my husband and I got together, after my husband and I got back together, my dad had to move out. And guess what happened? My parents got back together after 15 years of separation. And it's been 17 years since then. And they are very devout Catholics. Now that's a miracle. I never thought that would happen. I thought that said we were done. Nothing was going to happen. That was it. After 15 years, that's what you think. God always brings good things out of the bad things. And we broke the chain. No matter what anyone tells you about having kids, staying home, homeschooling, praying for your spouse in difficult marriage, do the will of God. And I will leave you with this. This is 1 Timothy 2:15. But she will be saved through motherhood, provided women persevere in faith and love and holiness with self-control. Thank you, and God bless you, and keep my family in your prayers. Thank you.
I think I'm not the only one in tears with that testimony. Thank you so much, Karina. Thank you for your yes to our Lord. I'm sorry. Karina, she's a true inspiration to me. Oh. Sorry, it's also a pregnancy, as you know. It's beautiful to have those role models, spiritual role models, and real role models too here physically. And it is such a beautiful gift to be a mother and a wife. And as Karina said, it's something that we can achieve sainthood through. And let us not forget about that. Let us not forget this beautiful message that God had for us. Maybe that reminder, that encouragement. We're going to place all of this right now in Mass, and there's going to be confession. Actually, confession already began with Father Peter. And I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you for saying yes and coming to the conference. And it was really all our ladies' plan. And thank you, Father Robert, Father Peter. Thank you, Mr. Gill. Thank you, Karina, everybody that made this event possible. And God bless you all. We're going to keep all of you in our prayers. Thank you.